everyone, and welcome back once again to the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get these sites staffed together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. We've got the full crew here again today. I'm your host. My name is Brian Vitale. Joining me, I've got Josh Torres.
Hi, hello.
We've got Adam Vitale.
You sound bored.
Me? I'm not bored.
What?
I just had to move like half a mountain of mulch for our friend this morning, so maybe I'm just worn out.
It's okay.
That's
understandable.
We've got James Galizio.
I have returned with a greater desire to play fighting games.
And Chow Min Wu.
Want to play with me?
Oh yeah, you were at the we mentioned that you were at the Arc System Works tournament last weekend, and that sounded like a really good time. That was one hell of a tournament.
Chow, I don't want to play fighting games with you.
Yeah, but I haven't played
I was talking with I was at a party last night, and there was like some dude there that got like top 64 in like UMBC 3 last time I was at Evo. And I was talking about Under Night with him, and I said, "Yeah, I used to play with a buddy of mine that played Batista," and he was like, absolutely disgusting."
Yeah. Was that you, Chow? Were you the Batista player?
Yes. He's also Carl Main in BlazBlue.
Oh my. Okay. Yeah, you do play Carl. Damn it, Chow.
You understand why I don't want to play against him now?
I don't know. I whenever I think about like the types of characters Chow means, like May and Strive, I'm like, yeah, all right.
He definitely has a type. He definitely has a type.
What is Chow's type?
He plays scumbag characters. He plays characters that have a gimmick. They have a gimmick, and then like they just piss you off if you don't know how to like play against them correctly. So like with Batista, she's a zoner, and like if you can't
only a zoner, she's a charge zoner.
Yeah, she's a charge zoner. So like if you get close, she has like a fucking crazy flash kick. So like, you're trying to get close by jumping towards me. You're a fucking idiot.
Well, here's the thing though. Is if you charge, if you see her crouching, it's like she can be charging two different attacks. You don't know, fucking flip a coin.
Yeah.
Man, people learn how to deal with this shit back in Street Fighter 2 fighting Guile, okay?
Child's like, just don't make any mistakes against it. I know what you're talking about.
Hey, it sounds like a valid strategy to me.
Meta, man. Most effective tactics available, guys.
Who's Xiao going to play as for Street Fighter 6?
The most scumbag character possible.
Oh, okay. Checks out.
Yeah, I can't.
I'm a Karen main in Street Fighter 5. He'll say I'm a scum.
Yeah.
I mean, Karen is like, look, I played Karen when I played Street Fighter 5, and even I'm gonna tell you, like, she's cheap, man. She's cheap.
Guys.
I forgive you. I forgive you at least. I'll still play with you, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna. Who did you main again in Type Lumina?
Noel.
Yeah, fuck you.
What about Persona 4 Arena?
Agus.
Yeah, I guess it's fucked up. Yeah. Okay. I can't even like be mad at it because I didn't play Persona 4 Arena. I played Naruto, so like.
Yes. Very explicitly. I wonder what your main would be if you played it Under Night.
I played. Because
Naruto is basically just the fucking like Melty Blood / Under Night character.
I didn't play Eunice, but like in Uniel I played Lin, but I never really played Eunice that much, so I don't know who would be my main there. There's an RPG site podcast.
Yep.
Promise. James, you came back with RPG news from the fighting game tour.
Unfortunately, there was no RPG news. Very unfortunate.
Yeah, there was other cool news there, but it's not RPG related.
Not even the BlazBlue
random tidbit. Arxis invited us to go, and I was like, "We cover RPGs, not fighting games." And they're like, "Oh, sorry."
and then we're just starting our podcast with 5 minutes of fighting game talk. I'm okay with it. Anyways, we are recording this on the year anniversary of Final Fantasy Origin: Stranger of Paradise.
You need to call it Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin. That's the title. If you say Final Fantasy Origin first, everyone will think, "Oh, you mean the PS1 re-release of FF1 and FF2?"
No one else thinks of that.
Should I re-download Final Strangers of Paradise and go through the DLCs?
Yes.
I mean, not yet. Maybe in a month, according to a certain news story. We also need to check if our saves are compatible when it comes to the certain news story. But yeah,
the news story is that it's coming to Steam April 6th. Yeah,
there we go. We did it.
Starting out with our major headline, Final Fantasy Origin, not the version on PS1 for Final Fantasy 1 and 2, but Stranger of Paradise.
Yeah, I mean,
on PC, it's been Epic Store exclusive since launch, and then Square and their draw out of a hat console release strategy, which has seemingly gone very poorly for them, apparently, is continuing as Stranger of Paradise comes to Steam, like 13 months.
I think they got. I mean, I don't know if it paid off well for them or not in this case. I mean, like they probably got paid a ton to like keep it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, their purse is probably pretty full with whatever Epic gave them to keep that.
And the people will definitely like I mean, I'm gonna buy it again probably because it has all the DLC. I never got any of the DLC on Epic when I had it. It's just the base game. I didn't pick up any of the other things. So I'm like. And I think it has like a permanent discount now as well to celebrate its like first year anniversary. I don't know how big the discount is. They mentioned it on, and then so I mean you're getting it at a lower price than you normally would with all the DLC. And yeah, I mean that sounds like a good deal to me.
So is now available at a permanently discounted price, but it doesn't tell me what.
Yeah, I don't know what the discounted price is. I was trying to find that too. I'm like, all right.
I haven't played this one yet, and I want to. So here, April looks pretty empty for me. So maybe this will be a good excuse. I feel like I need to share this. My girlfriend calls this Frank Sinatra Final Fantasy. Like, have you played Frank Sinatra Final Fantasy yet? I'm like, no, not yet. It comes to Steam in April.
That's a great name for it. It's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, all right. He really did do it his way.
He did. Hey, you know what? One hell of a Final Fantasy game with a very interesting cast and a very interesting main character. I like it. But I say that on the basis that I haven't played any of the DLC, so I don't have like any I don't have that baggage in my heart for it.
Everyone except for one person specifically I know that actually really got into that DLC. The DLC basically soured a lot of the good feelings about the game for them.
Yeah. I do wonder how I do plan to go with the DLC because there's this Reddit post that a friend shared with me saying hey, if you're at the point in the game where you beat the base game and now you're ready for the end game ramp into the DLC, there was a Reddit post that went into detail okay, here are the step by step here's the smoothest progression ramp into the DLC.
Here's the problem with me.
Okay.
I wanted to actually get around to grinding stuff in the game, but it's most efficient to do that in multiplayer. Nobody's playing multiplayer on the Xbox version.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Now with the Steam version coming out, multiplayer will be very alive for several weeks. I would assume so. I would assume a lot of people want to grab it on Steam, and especially with all the DLC. Why not try to do that?
I assume there's no crossplay.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think so. But well, best of luck. I mean, I would like to try to make an earnest attempt. If not, I do have a friend that is in that who completed DLC 1 but didn't do DLC 2. So he'll probably be hey, you want me to help out? I'm like, yeah, sure. So I have that benefit as well, right? I have that avenue.
Obviously, I wasn't planning to start with that, but I guess that's what I get for reminding people that it came out a year ago. But it's mostly for myself saying it's been a year and you still haven't gotten to it. But April for Steam, Final Fantasy Origin, Stranger of Paradise. I think the game we're actually going to open with today is a game that we've talked about on a few instances on this podcast. It's a game that's coming out in May, I believe, May 16th. This is Atlus Fallen. This is an open world RPG that was announced late last year around the time of the Game Awards. We got the announcement of the game. We thought at the time we covered it. I remember mentioning that it looked pretty interesting. Then last week or the week before, we got the final release date for it. But I remember thinking it was a bit strange that we got the announcement of the release date before any actual gameplay footage, and Deck 13 on their Twitter page for the game said that the gameplay footage would be coming imminently. Well, we got a gameplay trailer for Atlas Fallen this last week, which is it's a news post on our site, and it is what it is, and it's kind of exactly what it sounds like. It's about 90 seconds of gameplay, but it's very trailerized in order to allow me to invent a verb here. There's no UI. It's cut up into very like cinematic snippets. It doesn't really show a lot of unedited gameplay at all. But however, in addition to Deck 13 releasing the gameplay trailer for Atlas Fallen, they also gave us the opportunity to at least preview the game, at least for a few hours, a vertical slice ahead of the May release. And that's what Josh was able to look at over the last week. So this is a game that we kind of thought was interesting, but had wished that we had a little bit more hands-on or had seen a little bit more of, but now we've gotten that chance. So I'll hand it over to Josh to talk about Atlas Fallen.
Yeah, this is an interesting game. It is by the developers of The Surge, those two games, and people have a fondness for those games. They're kind of like the Souls-like games that was more like machine themed. Like there's a bit about like dismemberment of enemies, and that if I remember correctly, Adam, because those games.
I consider Adam the Surge expert. He can speak to those games.
Oh, yeah.
I think he pretty much exhausted what those games have to offer.
It's like I remember them being like the very machinery focused with like robotic limbs and so forth. But
yeah, it basically was a Souls game, and I mean that like it was very inspired by Souls in terms of its structure, but with like you get certain items to upgrade your exosuit by like cutting off a person's arms. You get parts for your arms and so on and so forth.
And this was back in like 2018, 2019-ish, when calling something a Souls-like still meant something, but it wasn't as pervasive as it is now.
Right, but this is totally different from both those games. Atlas Fallen is an open world action RPG. I think when people like first like maybe glance at it, they'll be like they'll think of probably Forspoken at first, because like that was like the most recent open world action RPG that got like big desert environment with it. But it's definitely not that, obviously. But it's a really interesting game. So when you boot up like the preview demo, the developers kind of give you like a very there's like a trailer about like kind of explaining the gameplay of it, and then you're kind of a ways into the game, like maybe the second or third mission into the game, like things have already happened, but like you're starting to actually play the game. So I forgot if the main character has a distinct name or if it's a created character. I can't remember, but you have this character, and they're equipped like with this gauntlet, and inside the gauntlet there's like this like light aura spirit or something called like Nyal or Nyarl, and that's kind of like your companion of the game. It's you make banter with it. It's kind of like a little more inquisitive type, like, oh, this is blah 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 blah, and oh, so this is like, oh, why this certain civilization is blah blah blah, or this creature is So it's kind of like that inquisitive type. It's like when it comes to like the gameplay of Atlas Fallen, it's a pretty different kind of game from the previous Surge games. It's a open world action RPG, and you have this creative character. I think it's a created character, I believe. I don't believe they have like a distinct name to them, if I remember correctly. Who is partnered up with this like little they wield the gauntlet, and then there's like a little like spirit in the gauntlet named Nyal or Nyarl, I believe. And like this like spirit in the gauntlet is sort of like your typical like partner character. A lot of people will probably think of like Forspoken, like I forgot the name of the Forspoken partner character, but this one's like less kind
cuff most of the time.
Right, cuff, right. Mm-hmm. And it's this partner character is like more inquisitive type. It's like but it's very like analytical, like, oh, like about this creature, it does this and this, or like about this like person that you're meeting, like they might have like their own agenda or something. It's like more inquisitive and like kind of more like questioning the things around you or what's happening, rather than like you're not like constantly arguing with it. You're just like, oh, okay, like, or whatever. You go say your own thing, but you're not like constantly arguing with it or whatever. You're kind of more
it's not omniscient, which I think I actually kind of like.
Yeah
the idea anyway.
So but the thing with this gauntlet is when you're engaged in combat, it kind of morphs into different weapons as you're playing out the encounter. So have your primary attack and secondary attack, And like at first, when you're initiating an encounter, it's like a small like hatchet and like kind of like a whip. So the hatch on your primary attack and like the whip on your secondary attack. And then the main thing that really defines this game, like the one thing that like makes this game different from most other games, is there's this bar called like the momentum gauge underneath like your life bar at the lower left corner, and as you're dealing damage to enemies, this momentum bar will fill up. And just imagine a bar, and it's divided into 3 segments. So I have like a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 of this bar. As you reach different tiers, so like when you get from tier 1 to tier 2, your weapons morph and become more powerful. So like once you reach tier 2 on this momentum bar, like you'll have like a much bigger like hatchet, almost like a giant axe of sorts, almost kind of almost resembling a scythe. And like then your whip like kind of almost becomes like the blades of chaos from God of War. And then once you reach tier 3, it becomes really crazy, where like your primary attack is like just kind of almost like a big axe scythe thing that's like it looks like very unwieldy to control. And your secondary attack it is like sort of split up down to like a blade bits. And think of like 00 Gundam Quanta's like sword bits, or like when you think of like Ivy from Soul Calibur, if like the segments of her sword were like a blade bit storm around you. You're kind of like doing that. And the interesting thing about this momentum gauge is that the more that it's filled up, depending if like you're tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3, like the more it's filled up, the more damage that you'll receive. So like, and it's like substantial. So like if like only you're in tier 1 you get hit, you'll take like a little bit of damage, like maybe like a fifth of like your health bar. But once you get to like tier 3, you take a hit, it's like half of your health right there. So you're really sacrificing a lot of like your defense for like a much like crazier offense. And that it feeds into like how you heal in this game as well, because how you heal in this game is through like sort of like healing charges. But these healing charges aren't consumable items. They instead like it only fills up as you're dealing damage. So like the more hits and more damage that you're dealing enemies, the faster that you're filling up like these healing charges on you. You can only have 3 at any given time, but you consume 1 and you hitting and filling up these healing charges. So like if you're getting out more hits and doing more damage, the faster that it fills up. So yeah, you have like a certain momentum and rhythm to it.
Can you choose when you like you mentioned that you lose your defensive capabilities as you tier up, as you're like undertaking your combo or combat and you're into the second area of your momentum bar, can you choose to toggle into that, or is it automatic?
No, it's all automatic. It's all automatic. But what you can do is you can actually cash in your momentum bar anytime that you go above like tier 1, after you have like your first like bar filled in the momentum gauge. Eventually, like shortly into the preview, you'll gain the ability to the finisher attack, where like you can press both L3 and R3 in, and then you'll do a big finisher attack. And obviously, the higher the bar is filled, the more damage and flashy finisher that it'll do. So like you do have like the manual option to spend all the momentum bar if you do want to like revert back into like that earlier stage to get like better defenses. But obviously your offense is kind of like reset into like the smaller weapons again. The thing that I like about this game is like your defense capabilities in it. So like and obviously you have like an evade button, so like anytime in the middle of the combo you can evade out of it. Even like mid slash or mid hit, like you can evade instantaneously. That's fine and good. But you have another thing called stone skin, and stone skin in this game is there'll be like whenever an attack comes to you, it'll be like the enemy will like flash red, and when it flashes red, you just have the stone skin button. And like for smaller enemies, if they hit you while you're stone skin, they'll like crystallize and freeze and then so that'll give you time to like beat up on them. But like for bigger enemies, like say like there'll be a big crab or a big like creature that's like just several sizes taller than you. Like it'll sort of like turn into like almost like a rhythm game almost, where like they have like certain attack patterns of where like you have to like stone skin multiple times, and every time you successfully stone skin their attacks, they'll like start gradually crystallizing, and then like after like say 3 or 4 successful like blocks with the stone skin ability on them, then they'll fully crystallize, and then that's when you can really get your offense in there. So that it's pretty like for instant when you stone skin, so like you're not like animation locked to what you're doing. Usually you can like just stone skill usually at any time, and then the window to do it is like pretty forgiving, I would say, maybe a little bit too forgiving. It's a very, very powerful ability from the preview build that they gave me.
I'm having like a nostalgia or something. I remember some other sort of action-based game where you just needed to time some sort of parry that wasn't animation locked every single time an enemy would normally hit you. And basically, if you had any decent timing at all, you would have basically no issue with the combat, at least at the normal difficulty. I can't remember what it was, but that's the way you're describing the stone skin mechanic in Atlas Fallen. Makes me think of that.
It kind of reminds you a little bit of Sekiro in that sense, because there's like, especially when you get to like the bigger ones, you need to have like get a rhythm down for like their attack behaviors. It does have like a really nice animation to it too. So like, when you stone skin something correctly and like you successfully do it, you can instantaneously do it again. But if you whiff it, it'll take like maybe a second for it to like charge back up till you can do it again. So there is like a certain, you can't just spam it all willy nilly. If you whiff it, and also like the animation for it is like anytime you're like your character is like doing something, whether it's like mid swing or just standing there, or whether they're jumping, like it'll take like a mold of your character and what they're doing, and like make like a stone like sculpture out of it that'll like crumble every time you use it. So it doesn't matter what your character model is doing; it'll actually make like a mold of what they're doing, and that's what the stone skin looks like. So it actually looks really neat, like what the effect is on there.
So as you were talking about this game, I revisited both the gameplay trailer that released this week as well as the world premiere trailer late last year. I thought it was around the Game Awards, but I guess it was around August, so I mistimed that a bit. But yeah, late last year was when this game got its reveal trailer. And one thing that the developers at Deck 13 really seem proud of, based on its prevalence in both the CG animation and the gameplay trailer, is like this sand surfing seemingly mechanic, like traversal of some sort.
Yeah,
I don't know if you got any aspect of that in your gameplay demo or anything like that.
So like the sand surfing is I mean, it's not as flashy as like maybe the trailers look at, because like it's basically your run button, but when you're on sand in the game. So like usually if you're like on harvests, you'll just typically run, but like when you're on sand, you'll just sand surf. That's like your default like running animation on the sand. There's nothing really flashy about it aside from like, yeah, it's cool that like you're surfing on sand to like get from point A to point B. On that, I don't know if they're gonna like expand upon that, or if there's like gonna be any more like traversal mechanics surrounding that. Maybe there is. I didn't like look too closely at like there's like this perk tree on it. So like I'll get to that in a sec. But another aspect of like I want to like clear up with the combat is like it's very aerial focused as well. And like kind of getting like used to the control scheme will take a bit for people, because very on top of like your primary and secondary attack being on like the square and triangle buttons, like all of your trigger buttons are constantly being used, in the sense that like, so like your stone skill is like on your left L1, and your evade is like on R1, but then like R2 is like to access, what was it? I think it was like accessing your like your abilities, because on top of like there's like this ability bar at their bottom right hand corner, and like the bottom of that is always your healing charges, but then there's like 3 empty slots, and like you can equip up to 3 abilities on them. And how that works is in like the gauntlet menu, how these abilities are divided up in that menu is that if you reach a certain your first skill is always going to be access to you, because like it just requires you to be in tier 1, but then to use the next ability that you slotted in, you have to be in tier 2, and then to use your other third ability, they're in tier 3. But it's like but all of these are like it's not free form. Like when you get an ability, or it's marked that assigned tier. So like if I get like an ability that like says that lets me like throw my axe at enemies, that's a tier 1 ability. I can't slot that into tier 2 and tier 3 because that's been categorized as only to be used in tier 1. You know what I mean?
I think so, yeah. So the abilities have limitations to where they can be slotted, and you have to progress in a certain, at least you have some free form in saying which abilities link together in which way, but with some constraints where this one has to be in the second or beyond slot.
Yeah. And then each of those ability slots, there are like 3 mini slots by them in that menu that like kind of they don't really alter the ability, but they're like additional like passive abilities. So say like once I reach tier 2, there's like maybe I have like a passive slot that says, oh, I start like regaining. I put in like a passive skill that says my healing charges heal me much more than they usually would, and that only goes into effect once I start, once I enter tier 2, or like in tier 1 I'll have like a passive that's like, oh, you do more damage with like your hammer primary attack, um, and then that'll always be in effect because that's a tier 1 thing, and it'll still remain true as I advance tiers in combat, and so forth. Another thing about combat, like I said earlier, is like the aerial focus. There'll be like a lot of aerial enemies and aerial encounters in the game, and the game allows you to like dash in midair, and it does sort of like this DMC thing of like, as long as you hit an enemy in the air, you'll regain that air dash. So you'll basically do like a combo on an enemy, and then like you can like, and then you can air dash, and then like you can like if you hit it like with your whip or like another attack, you can like regain that air dash charge. So like you continue being in the air. Um, and in the preview demo, there's like a main quest that says, oh, like you need to go find more pieces of your gauntlet to power it up. So once you find like these 3 pieces, to power up your gauntlet, it allows you to dash 2 times in the air before like you need to refill them back up. So you can stay airborne in this game for a pretty damn long time, provided that like you're good, just like getting at least 1 hit on an enemy after like air dashing.
Does it feel good to play? Because I know sometimes air combat can look really flashy, but I never like the feel of it because you can't like change direction midair. If you hold back on the stick or whatever, you've already got momentum in a certain direction. You're not able to basically position yourself the way you want.
It's pretty snappy, but like early on, it'll feel sort of restricted because like you only have 1 air dash until you get that upgrade, and then you start like getting a better feel for it because now you have like 2 opportunities to like change your direction midair, or like before you need to like refill your air dashes. It's like combat is pretty responsive in that sense, and like air combat will feel weird at first to get used to because like you have to kind of get the momentum of like, okay, I'm doing an enemy, and then I consume an air dash, and then like I have to get another hit on an enemy to like get that air dash back to get like sort of like just a way for me to remain in the air, or you can, what you can actually do is like on the right trigger, there's like a the right trigger is like the specific like a button to like either do an attack that goes from air to the ground or ground to the air. So it's like sort of both your launcher and like your finisher button, and then left trigger is the one that accesses your abilities and healing flasks. So you like on top of like your main attack buttons, you kind of have to get for the feel of like, hey, your L1 is stone skin, R1 is your evade and air dash. Right trigger is like your finisher button from air to ground or ground to air. Then you can seamlessly go into from like your combo, and then left trigger is like you hold that down, either use your healing charge or your abilities, and then once you use an ability, it'll go to cooldown before you can use it again. So like it's a lot to manage at first, and it will feel kind of overwhelming. But I sort of started getting the feel for it, once I like kind of played more and more. But it will kind of you will have to like do some practice, like trying to get the flow of combat in before it starts to really click. But once it starts to really click, I really did like it. Like it gives you a lot of options. You just have to kind of get used to like the language of the game, so to speak, on that.
Does the vertical slice start out like at the outset of the game, or is it like in media res, like in the middle of an event where you're not quite sure what's going on?
It's kind of more like you don't know what's really going on. Like it kind of gives you a very basic lowdown of the story, but it's still very enigmatic. And to be honest, I'm like, it's hard to get invested in the story. Like when you're kind of in a vertical slice, they're trying to establish things, and like they kind of give you like a backstory of like some of the things of like what the gauntlet was in the past. Is like this ancient weapon, like wiped out like the forces of like baddies, but you don't really get a good sense of like what's going on. You kind of talk to some people, do some side quests. Like the whole like you do stumble like upon a town, and like they want to like open this gate to like go meet these knights, but like they don't have the power to like open the gate, and only your gauntlet can. But your gauntlet isn't powerful enough to open this gate yet. So it's like a lot of like it's a lot of vertical slice stuff that's like kind of like okay, whatever. You're kind of more there to get a feel of the gameplay, and like the story stuff is like it's kind of hard to get invested because you're kind of thrown like not in the middle of it, but you're just kind of like you're thrown so far off, like you even know where to establish like where to like, because if you don't really know how the beginning of the game begins, so you're just like you're kind of thrown left into the ether at this point. You're like kind of like I don't know what's going on, and like you're just kind of like you're just nodding with what people are saying. You're like yeah I guess so. There'll be side quests along the map. They'll be like, oh, there's these wraiths that are like threatening the town. Go over there and kill them. We're like, all right, and then this wasn't a side quest, but like a side activity. But one of the more interesting side activities was like there are like these totems where like you put the totem up from the ground with like your gauntlet, like kind of you raise it, and then like there'll be a beacon of light that'll like point to like another totem of light, and then you have to kind of like race over there, kind of like a time trial of sorts, like tap that totem, and then it'll point to another thing, and then it's kind of like a time trial, like keep on tapping these light totems before like the light expires on them to like complete the challenge. Like and then like there's like your currencies in the game where like you'll get crafting items to like equip abilities, because some abilities, like for some reason when you get an ability, some of them are like recipes of the ability, and then like in order to equip this ability you need like 2 fiery leaves, 3 of this stone or whatever, and 1 of this thing to like equip it. And you're like, okay, I guess, sure. But like once
not all the time. Like sometimes you don't have this.
Sometimes you don't have to. Sometimes they don't require a thing to unlock. Sometimes you just get the full ability. And it's not a recipe for the ability. And it's not. But once you fully unlock it, you can equip it and unequip it at any time. It's just like sometimes you'll just get a recipe of the ability, and you'll need like mats to unlock it. It's like I never found it like too out of the way. Like you can actually mark like where you can get the resources, but even then, when I was just playing normally, like I just unlocked a good chunk of them because like I just went out of my way to like kill stuff. So I don't know, like that's kind of a weird aspect to it that like I'm like yeah, okay, whatever. What else? There's like an elite enemy in a quest that like you encounter that is like is kind of out of nowhere. Like I was kind of just roaming around, and then like it kind of did a cool transition where like it kind of made like the environment all red and foreboding, and like I was like kind of thrust into like a boss arena like for this elite encounter, and it was like it's a pretty big enemy, where like you kind of whittle down its health a bit, and then it'll go to like a secondary phase where like there'll be like four stones that you have to like take out from like the sides of the enemy, but like as you're like trying to take out these stones that are like kind of like regenerating it, there'll be like mobs constantly spawning and to like give you a hard time as you're like trying to take out these stones, along with like different new attacks that the boss is throwing at you as well. So like combat can get pretty busy in this game, especially when you're juggling like around like multiple enemies all at once, and then they're like all throwing different attacks at you. So you have to think about when to stone skin, and there'll be some attacks you can't stone skin that are indicated by like blue lights right before an enemy attacks. So you have to dodge those instead of stone skinning them. And then there's like, and then as I explored more of the world, there's like the weird things about it. Like at like the edges of the map, there are like these really gigantic like creature-esque things called like watchers on top of like watchtowers that are like really big. I don't know if they're monsters, but they're like structures that look like monsters, and they're like at the edges of the map. And like I didn't really try to approach one yet because the one time I did, and once again is a work in progress game. It's still in active development. Like it was like at a sandy area, and like my frame rate just fucking dipped like really really hard, like at these edges, because it was like a lot of like effects were going on with the sand and whatnot. So I was like, okay, I don't want to be here because I want my frames back. It's just jittering all over the place.
I do like when you like look in the wrong direction and your frame rate halves, goes from like 60 or 70 to 20, and you're like, gee, I wonder what's going on over there, but I'm not touching.
Yeah, so the one time I tried to do that, it's like, hey, I'm like, okay, fine, I guess I can't go there because my game doesn't like when I do that.
When you're talking about the comparisons to Monster Hunter, I actually realized like I don't remember if this game is multiplayer or single player, and apparently it's a completely co-op campaign. I don't know if your vertical slice is, but the game is intended to be a co-op game.
It didn't have the co-op features in it, but there's like an option on the main menu to get into a co-op game. So that is cool. That's like a fully co-op thing if you want to play with a buddy. Like the combat just even by yourself is already really fun. So I can imagine how it is with a friend. I imagine it's a blast. But I mean, like so far, it seems to be shaping up. It does a really funny thing. Because there's like certain like things in the world like that are fast travel points. Like there's like these anvils that like you raise from the ground, and like even like treasure chests. Like there'll be like a glowy thing from the ground. And you use your gauntlet to like raise them from the ground to like reveal them. So like anvils are kind of like your sort of like your waypoints. They're not like bonfires. They don't like respawn enemies or anything. But like when you discover one and you hit them with your gauntlet, like instead of a hammer, you just use your gauntlet like bash them to like activate them, which is really funny. And like the first one that you come across is like it gives like a corporeal form to like the spirit in your gauntlet, and it looks like a Navi from Avatar, like straight up. It's like really weird. Like, it's like, oh, okay, I guess that's what the spirit in my gauntlet looks like. But from there you can like access how you, like upgrades to like your momentum gauge, upgrades to like your abilities, upgrading like the like it's like you have an option to like upgrade the armor that you have. So I assume there'll be like different armors that you get that you can upgrade to them, because like as you upgrade them, you're actually upgrading your stats as well, and that's how you get your perk point. And there's like a basic perk point tree that like gives you additional things that like like your charging up your healing flask will go faster. That's like one of the perks out there.
Does the character does the main character actually speak, or is it like Monster Hunter, like the hunter always just nods and gestures?
They speak, yes, they speak.
Oh, okay, so that's good.
Yeah. But
I don't want to say that protagonists always have to speak, but when like for some reason when I was playing Wild Hearts and your character just kind of does the Monster Hunter like nod and gesture, I was just like, I don't know.
They interact with people. Yeah, they have their own. So yeah, I mean that's just like a very brief like summary of like what I played. I'll do a more formal write up on it, but I think it's looking to be a pretty promising game. I think it's really fun to control in combat. Obviously, it being a vertical slice of like a big action RPG, it's like hard to like kind of make sense of the story at this point, because like it's just a very very limited part of the game right now. And yeah, it's cool. I think it's a lot of fun to play. If I were to like make comparisons to it, like the combat reminds you a little bit of like Darksiders 1 with a little bit of like Vagrant Story, because of how like in Vagrant Story there's this whole like chain attack thing that like the more you attack, the higher like your risk gauge would be. So like you kind of put yourself more at risk by attacking continuously. But this game does have like debuff effects, like Vagrant Story did. Which I know this will make a lot of sense for a lot of people. Like, oh yes, Vagrant Story. Of course, everyone remembers that battle system. You know, and then like with a little bit of like with a little bit of like God Eater in the sense that like like when you get to like the tier 3 like weapons, like I was reminded of like in God Eater, like when your weapon turns into like that devouring weapon where it tries to like, eat up enemies. This like your weapon's kind of wieldy in that fun sense where like they're just kind of like feel like they're going out of control because they're so powerful at this point, and you don't want to mess up because like you take a lot of damage. And like even if you take damage at that point, you'll take a lot of damage, but you're not losing momentum gauge. Like you're not being punished for just getting hit on that. You're getting punished in terms of like you take a lot more HP damage, but you're not getting punished in terms of like lessening your offensive options, which is nice. Like it's like, okay, let me take the hit. I fucked up, like, but at least let me keep on attacking in this really awesome mode, and that's it delivers on that front. So that's just that's my experience so far with Atlus Fallen. I think it's really cool. I think that what they're it's shaping up to be a really fun game. Like it's just one of those things once again that like you'll have to come in terms of like it is in terms of like while the combat system is really cool and like the movement options are really cool in that sense, like the way it's structured is very modern AAA video game. Like it's a big open world. There'll be there's a map screen that like with icons that'll fill up when you're off exploring. There'll be side quests that like might not be like the most engaging side quests, but with NPCs like pointing you a certain way. So, but I'm hoping that like there'll be more interesting like side activities like that totem pole challenge thing along the way. I think that is like a small glimpse of like, okay, at least also hopefully there'll be more different things to do in the world aside from just like, hey, go here and beat up the wraiths or like a mat or like some upgrades.
No, I think it looks really interesting, and I'm just glad it's not a Souls-like.
Yeah,
for deck 13. Obviously that's kind of been what put them, I won't say put them on the map, but what a lot of their previous work points to. So I guess when your choices are between like Souls-like or open world action RPG, both of those are kind of well-worn thoughts or well-worn trends. But I don't know, for this one I'm kind of more in the, if this was a Souls-like I'd be less interested in it, and I don't really know why. It's like self-reflection. I guess it feels like more recently, especially with like Elden Ring, kind of blending the line between those two fields anyway. A game can be both, or it can be one or the other. And also, looks like there is, as you've been speaking, a lot of gameplay footage from different content creators of all sizes has gone up onto YouTube. So a lot of this gameplay is, I guess, out there now with different impressions. Now that the kind of the gameplay reveal trailer kind of introduced the marketing for what this gameplay is like, and now everyone's been able to go hands-on and share it within their different mediums of what the game feels like, with the release date again set for May 16th. So I think that's a good window for it. It doesn't get too pushed towards a crowded holiday season. Kind of lands in that late spring, early summer spot.
Yeah, I hope it launches in a good state. Like the performance, aside from like the edges of the map thing, like the performance for me was fine. So I've obviously once again it's a work in progress development build. It is not reflected on the final game, and I'm hoping that the final game will be like in fine shape. Hopefully we don't have like another game to talk about. It's like, well, it's just like another Wild Hearts and Wolong,
another game that you go over to Steam and it's overwhelmingly negative because it launches as a train wreck.
Yeah, so hopefully you definitely don't want it for a game like this, because it's very reactive. It's very, the combat is very fast paced. That is true for those other games as well. But especially,
and hell, campaign co-op always makes me like. Campaign co-op can elevate even. I don't want to say Atlas Fallen is mid. I'm not saying that, but campaign co-op can elevate even the most mid of games.
I am very interested to see like what the weapon options are like. This game, like I had so much fun with just like this one weapon in this game. Like I wonder what other weapons are going to be like. What other sorts of like weapons are they going to transform into? I wonder if it's like a weapon is like more of like a magic elemental range build or something. Which we don't know yet. But I'm really, because the way they structure it, it feels like you have like 6 different weapons with you because both of your attack buttons like changes to 3 different weapons depending on like what tier they're at on the momentum gauge. They only get more crazy as they like kind of like level up in combat. But I think there's a real nice ebb and flow to the combat that they have. It's a really cool, interesting concept that really encourages like playing aggressively, playing well, playing like as the gauge says, like playing with like momentum on your side.
Yeah, it does definitely feel like with the way the health system works and with the way the weapons and the skills tier up, that it's a game where the pacing really matters and takes into account the action aspect of the RPG, rather than just being something like Dark Souls 1 where you can just kind of tank and spank everything with a giant shield. It's more of a
Right.
Bloodborne action, active reload things, sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing your impressions on your little bit of a vertical slice for Atlus Fallen, Deck 13's new open world action RPG coming out in May. Definitely one that's on my list and one that I've been interested in, even with just the initial premise. But it seems like maybe I'll poke through some of the gameplay trailers themselves, before this comes out in May to kind of see, kind of fits up my alley, and it's launching at a very good time. And we'll see if it ends up holding up to its potential.
Yeah, I really hope they like kind of like reveal more of like that preview reel that played at the beginning of that demo, because it actually gives you a pretty good brief breakdown. And I think people would be like very interested in it more, like if they actually saw like how the game like with the game's like with the game instructions spelled out, that it's like, okay, there's like the actual like controls of the game, and like this how the actual game like plays, like the tug of war you're playing at each encounter. I think it would serve them well if they like kind of release that in like a more polished.
And also just the fact, like I said earlier, that the gameplay trailer is very chopped up and cinematic, where it might be interesting just to watch a person, a creator, just playing through the game with the full UI, just no post processing, just the game as it is.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I guess I haven't not having watched these. I'm assuming that's what it is. It could potentially just be B-roll provided by Focus Home or Focus Interactive.
It is B-roll.
Oh, it is B-roll.
Yeah. So all the footage is B-roll that is being chopped up.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll still be able to glean something from it. The second game that we have listed here is a game that came out a bit ago now, a few weeks ago, that we did mention the review when it went up on the site. This is the official English localization for Trails to Azure, which Scott wrote up the review and put that up on the site over the last month. We spoke about it briefly when that review went live, and the review went up early in the month when the game only released just a few days ago officially. And we kind of teased at the time that Chow Min-woo has been updating a guide that he originally wrote for this game when it released in Japan several years ago, now that he has the official English terms and the making sure that it can be followed and updated for the official NIS America release. And as an aspect of revisiting that guide, you've been playing a lot of Trails to Azure recently. I know it's been a lot of work, but we earmarked some space here for you, Chow, to talk about revisiting Trails to Azure and your experience with it, playing the official English release for this game.
How much of those quality of life changes really makes an improvement to the game. Because back in the day, I think the reason I didn't like Zero as much as Azure, because I played like the original PSP version, and it was a slog to get through a lot of the battles because you can't skip them, and everything just kind of dragged on. And while playing Azure now with all these quality of life improvements, this kind of like feels like a whole different game.
No, most of these improvements, like I played this back with the fan translation a year and a half or so back, and even then, I believe that PC port had a few speed up options or things like that. But obviously,
they implemented that. Well, they had like things that you could even like skip, like S-craft animation, which wasn't a thing you could do back in the day. Which kind of like
I hate having to watch those.
Yeah, in my opinion, it's like super tax is like it's cool when you see it once, but after like when you want to see it like multiple times, you just don't really care for it, right? So, yeah, like with those quality of life improvements, it makes a huge night and day differences. And I think Azure is like one of the first games that lets you sort of like skip the S-craft animation, so it was kind of new. But obviously, now that in Western releases, like
it's a mandatory feature at this point.
You're like, you don't really care, There's also a boss fight that has a time limit. So imagine if you could skip the S-crafts back in the day. Imagine you're forced to watch it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't have to imagine. I did it.
Yeah. I'm still in the belief this is my personal favorite Trails game. It has the best quartz system, in my opinion. It has the best of Cold Steel and the best of Sky, which is the Orbment and the Master Quartz. So you got the two together. It is literally the perfection quartz system in my opinion, because it's not stupid and dumbed down like Cold Steel is, and it's not overly complicated, and has the best features from the Sky. So that's my take with the quartz system. And
well, I should have realized this when I played Zero and Azure back to back when the fan translations came out. But Azure was the game that introduced the idea of Master Quartz, and I remember Master Quartz I thought was really kind of a cop out. Like they're basically just like all-in-one build boxes. Like this quartz you equip it and you are an evade tank, or this quartz you equip it and you all of a sudden are a crit sweeper or whatever. They're just kind of pre-packaged builds. At least in Cold Steel, that's kind of how I feel. You just slap that onto someone and they're immediately all set to go. Where Azure seems like it's not quite the level of complexity of the Sky trilogy, where you have to make sure you have certain elemental counts and you have to have like your the table pulled up where it's like, I need this many of this element and this many of this element to be able to cast this spell or whatever, which at the time I really enjoyed, but the further away I get from that, the more I'm like, you know what, that was a bit overly designed. I do agree that Azure and Zero, even though it doesn't have the Master Quartz, I like the quartz system in both games a lot more than how far it got simplified down into the Cold Steel series.
Yeah, I mean, it basically gets the best of the both worlds. I know people kind of like, I don't know, they don't look at the story the same way. I personally think that this has the best story in my opinion, because it sticks the landing. A lot of the Trails games don't really sticks the landing. There's plot twists that pays off. There's characters that are menacing. It's like, if you look at Osborne in Trails to Azure, it's like this guy is like totally a menacing threat, and now he's a fucking clown in Cold Steel 4. So it's like, or even Lecter, it's like this is a character that they built up throughout this entire franchise. And
careful now.
Ooh.
I didn't say anything.
But it's like, I don't know, like in my opinion, if there wasn't Cold Steel 4 or all the Cold Steel games, I think this is like would definitely be like my favorite RPGs of all time. But like when you look at like in the retrospective, it's like from all the later games, it kind of done this game dirty.
Yeah, like I was thinking about this when Trails to Azure was coming out, and like when I was thinking about like my review of this game, if I were to review it now, would be a very different review from when I first played it.
Yeah.
I definitely get you on that front, where like it's not just a cross bell alone. Like Sky suffers a little bit. This is like I'm just really
there's certain
I'm just really not. I'm not a fan of
elements from Sky that later games kind of dulls the edge. And I got into like an argument with somebody the other day about a specific thing from Sky where it's like the way it's presented back then, and then the way they kind of recontextualize it later. It's like, yeah, that feels like a cop out.
In a vacuum, I really like Zero and Azure. Azure Azure at the time when I first played it on PSP was like, it felt like a really magical game. It's like, man, you can really pull off a lot of stuff. It felt like a very, very complete game, even on like a PSP UMD. You think about like this, like the limitations of like PSP at that time, and like it felt like they crammed a lot into this game to make it work. It felt very, very fully featured from beginning to end, and like you said, it really gives you a great send out of that cross bell duology. It's like, wow, Falcom's fucking amazing at what they're doing, and like when you think about like, it really brought me back to the time like we really went from Azure to Cold Steel 1, and like I remember like the really big backlash from when they first revealed Cold Steel 1 in Japan. everyone was still very high off of like Azure, and it's like, man, what is this series becoming now? Like, this is a weird burn, I
Cold
guess.
Steel 1 left a very bad first expression, but as you play on, it becomes a very good game in my opinion.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, looking back and like knowing what you know now, it's like okay, like Cold Steel 1, not bad. You know,
I still think like in a vacuum, Cold Steel 1 and 3 are very good. And it's funny, it's like so many people, you could kind of gauge how they're going to feel about that entire arc, about how they feel about Cold Steel 1 versus Cold Steel 2. Almost everyone that generally prefers Cold Steel 1 versus Cold Steel 2, I'm sorry, bro, you're not going to like it at the end of the arc.
But
just something about it, you know?
But yeah, I mean, but Azure is just like, it's like you said, it manages the balance, the most interesting systems, that Sky and like certain elements of Cold Steel like that started to develop. But Azure was also kind of was like there were new aspects about Azure at the time that felt like in retrospect it was also the poison that like the drip of poison that like just poisoned the whole well.
Yeah, it poisoned the well, because there's one part, it's like, okay, so there's some very drastic story moments in Azure, like some very like shock you to the core. Then they just don't have like the balls to like go out with it. It kind of reminds me of like Final Fantasy IV. It's like all these characters ends up dying, and they magically show up in the end, and they're all fine. It's like they don't have the guts to go this one drastic direction. Either you do it or you don't. Don't just do a cop out and just and just say everything's okay at the end. I think that hurt the storytelling and the aspect in the long run. And there are some moments that kind of set up like Couché in Azure, like that you'll see in like later Cold Steel games, where every time Reen tried to summon Valimar, I'll be like Valimar, and it'll be their friends coming out, and no need for that. And Azure actually started that, which is yeah, there would be like these parts. Oh man, we can't fight these guys, even though you've been kicking these guys' ass all the time, and they're like, oh man, we need. It's like, what do we do? Your friends comes out.
In general, I think Azure and Zero, the fact that it is just a duology, I think pays dividends in so many ways. You don't have villains that stick around too long. Well, I say that even though I know some of them reappear in Reverie, so hooray. So that they don't become like non-threatening because you fought them 1,000 times and you're like, oh, yep, McBurn's still dangerous. Trust us. You fought him 1,000 times, but believe me, he's powerful. And then like the areas and the ideas don't get too like long in the tooth. They can do this really clever thing. There's this very clever bit, this story revelation. Obviously, I'm not going to say it here, but there's one at the very end of Azure that explains a thing in Zero that is just very neat and tidy, that I think if it was 4 games between the two instead of just 2, wouldn't have hit nearly as hard. So I think basically, to sum it down and paint it with a really wide brush, Cold Steel was just too many games. And I say that having not played Hajimari, which I know is not officially a Cold Steel game, but it has a lot of the same cast.
I think they could have done it with 3 games.
Just I really appreciate that Zero and Azure is 2 games, and the first game kind of has a very standalone central conflict while introducing many of the longer term threads. Where I think Cold Steel is just too much, too big, too long, so that by the time you're in game 4, game 5, a lot of the interest or excitement's just kind of gone. Where in Azure, by the time your interest is waning, it's over, it's concluded, you've hit the climax, and now you're on the denouement or whatever you want to call it. So I really just appreciate, especially the fact that it's a limited playable cast, especially in Azure, Zero's case and things like that. So that's my general opinion on why, like, Crossbell has always been this sort of white whale. Like, well, is it really as good as people say it is, or people are just saying that because it hasn't been localized? It's the forbidden fruit. Therefore, people think it's good. It's one of the few cases where I played it. I'm like, you know what? This actually genuinely is really good.
Generally, I think it has the best pacing for most of the Trails games. Because, okay, I know a lot of people's favorite Trails games probably Trails in the Sky the Third, but my beef with that game is nothing really happens until the last quarter of the game. It has the ultra highest moment of any Trails game, but to get there, it just takes forever. You're on this wild goose chase where these characters just keep, just giving you like mixed signals, and it's like, oh yeah, not happening. Next chapter, not happening. Next chapter. Repeat that like 5 times, and all the stuff just coming all at once in the last quarter of the game.
I think what benefits the third is that since the franchise was still so new and there wasn't as much of an expectation, it really kind of works to its benefit because it's allowed to be kind of more of a slower paced game, more of a kind of like character driven game. And like that's, you really see it at the end there where it's like, there's like, still like, I still don't think I played a game with quite as much catharsis as like the very ending of Trails in the Sky the Third, with all the characters that like you've grown to love, just kind of like being very, very down to earth. And it's like, yeah, goodbye, but and all that. It's just like really, really good.
It's an awesome send off. I think that it has like the best ending of all the Trails games. But like I'm saying, like it's not my favorite just because of how the game is paced. It's not evenly paced. It's just like it just throws everything in the last quarter. If I don't know, like if you're just kind of like playing it like casually, it's like you might get like bored of it before you get to where the games start to pick up. It's like
the third is more gameplay centric.
Yeah.
More than anything.
I think you're completely ignoring that this is like a vignette style game where you're getting little intro, little like character focused mini stories all throughout. It's not about like a front to back plot line so much.
Yeah, I
There's nothing wrong with that, but it's just very different from like and like how normal RPGs tell their story. I think it makes it unique and interesting in my opinion.
I think Zero and Azure basically capture some, not all, the strengths of third, packaged in a more conventional way.
Yeah. Also, and I want to stress here, obviously, a lot of us on this this podcast generally aren't as hot on Cold Steel as I would argue most people. We're very much a bubble here. So if you're listening to this and you prefer Cold Steel, it's your favorite arc, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. And also, like a lot of the strengths that we were just talking about with the third, like Reverie has that. It does. So people have that to look forward to in a couple months. So.
You know what? I gotta say though, Lloyd, one hell of a protagonist and like a really interesting and weapon of choice, like compared to like most RPGs. So like the electric like Tonfa's baton sort of thing that he has going on. It's like it's kind of like I like when like RPGs kind of like just give their main character a really like unconventional weapon that you don't see like in others, because a lot of RPGs like I have a sword. Okay,
he has
cool.
the Tonfas because his whole thing is he wants to protect Crossbell, so he has a very defensive weapon.
I just gotta get over that barrier somehow.
Thanks, Chow. We were almost there without saying it.
I will say the Zero and Azure peak Falcom sound team. Really, some really good
I don't know, Josh. I feel like hoping that Chow wouldn't bring that up was a bit of an inevitable struggle.
Dying here.
You guys suck.
But yeah, the Falcom sound, like the Zero and Azure, especially Azure, are still one of the most memorable OSTs for me when it comes to Falcom games. It has a really, really, really good, well-rounded OST.
I'm looking forward to when Adam, the way he like marathons things and like neat packages, he's gonna show up randomly like in early June and be like, "Yep, okay. Over the last week, I've played Zero, Azure, and Nayuta, or whatever." I guess he wouldn't have played Nayuta by then, but he'll played all of the releases from the last years.
Yeah, like no, we'll blink and like we won't check up on Adam for a week. It's like I'm done with Zero, Azure, Cold Steel 1 through 4. I even played Reverie somehow, and I learned Japanese and Kura went into all in a week.
And then he's gonna be like, let me explain to you why Nayuta is the best Trails game ever.
That'd be an amazing feature, actually. I would love that.
I call it the Adam AI speedruns. But yeah, like I don't know. I still think this is my favorite game from the Trails franchise right now. Like, going through Cold Steel, I would stick with the first game now being my personal favorite out of the 4.
That's interesting.
Which is kind of weird, because the game starts off leaving a very terrible impression. We have a protagonist lands on a girl's breast, and you're like, and he gets slapped.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh my god, it's like, what am I playing here? Is this Trails? And I don't know, like somehow it slowly worked out. There are some stupid character moments that makes you kind of wonder. It's like, what is with this forced conflict? But I guess like the game kind of learns to when to end, which the later games doesn't learn to. They kind of got stupidly long.
Okay, this will be. I don't know if you were you around the time? This is a lot. This like maybe fucking. This is a long time ago. But do you remember in the JoJo's manga run when they ended part 7, and then when they introduced Steel Ball Run, they just introduced that as Steel Ball Run. No one knew it was a JoJo's yet until like way later on. So like there was like speculation whether it was a JoJo or not. But it had that mystery around Steel Ball Run, where it's like this is such a weird premise, weird characters in a Rocky style, but like we don't know if it's actually connected to JoJo at all. Do you remember like sort of like that era?
I remember that era, but I was into JoJo back in the day.
Yeah,
I didn't read it up. I was like, damn.
Yeah,
like,
but yeah, I kind of wish there was like a way for like games to kind of like mimic that, but of course games need to have like an official title to them and everything. So like I kind of wish when they like introduced Cold Steel, like they just left out the Legend of Heroes Trails part of it and like just called it something else, and like you didn't know it was like related to Trails at all until like the very end or something, or like.
Okay,
I mean that would have been hard to do considering like the whole name of the country.
Yeah, I know, but I just wish there was a way to like kind of give like Cold Steel that like era of mystery that Steel Ball Run had. I think that would have been really cool for it.
I actually felt like that playing Cold Steel 1 because I haven't touched what is it, 0 for like maybe like 10 odd years since that time, and I have kind of like forgot about the Trails franchise by then, so I sort of like forgot it, and then I went back to beat Azure later after playing Cold Steel 1, so that effect sort of happened to me actually.
Okay, yeah. But like you still knew that like it was still tangentially related.
Yeah. I know it was like kind of related. I just haven't played it in such a while, so I kind of forgot the details that these games were connected for a second.
Yeah.
Oh
no.
I will say that like Hajimari is, for me, who's only caught up on the English releases, it's like the only one that's purely, at least standalone in terms of the way it's titled, but obviously has protagonists from both Crossbell and Cold Steel. I have no idea if it bridges to Kuro to what extent. So I'm interested.
I will just say this now. And I think I have mentioned it on the podcast before. In many ways, Kuro is more of a follow-up to Reverie than pretty much any other game in the series. Like it very deliberately, like directly follows up on the events of Reverie in some weird, interesting ways.
Okay, like obviously the chronology I wasn't ever in doubt of, but just the way that it's packaged, as it's like every other game, it's like you have the Trails trilogy, the Crossbell, or sorry, the Sky trilogy, the Crossbell duology, the Cold Steel is a 4-set, then Kuro is now a pair, but Hajimari is kind of its own thing, and I'm like, oh, sorry, yeah. So I'm excited, and I'm glad that I took the time to get caught up last year to see kind of where Hajimari goes.
I think Reverie for me, like as someone who's like played it and like and has like and knows what I like out of RPGs and what I don't like out of RPGs. The complaints that people will have out of Reverie will either tell me that like they know what they want out of RPGs or don't know what they want out of RPGs in a weird way, because like I really like Reverie. I think Reverie has like some of the most horrendous menuing in an RPG I've played in the last 20 years.
Trails to Walk
is very funny because there's like aspects of that game that I think are like some of the worst in the series, and then there's aspects of it that are some of the best. And it's like just that overall package still somehow manages to be one of my favorite Trails games. It's just
I will say, just again as an outsider, it's hard for me not to just think of it as this is Trails from Cold Steel 5 starring Lloyd plus mysterious third character.
It sure is great how 2 out of the 3 routes in that game are good and 1 is bad, and the one that's bad is probably not the one you would expect to be bad.
Huh.
Yeah, I heard the same thing from all my friends. They're like,
it's a really interesting.
The way they've said it is like the best route is done by a new writer, while like the bad routes are done by like the veteran writers or something.
I
like that.
don't think there's actually any proof of that.
But
I have no idea.
It's speculation.
I didn't do any research to actually verify any of those claims, but
I heard there's a lot.
I was willing to take people at their word. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what the reception to that is gonna be like. But man, I wonder if Durante did anything to make the menuing better in that game. Oh my god, please.
Before one last thing,
Okay.
There was, if anyone was able to beat Trails to Azure, there is a very good send-off message to Scott. He was like the lead.
Yeah, we mentioned it like when Quentin and
yes,
Cullen were here. Yeah, they mentioned that. Really touching.
Yeah.
Farewell to one of the development team, that sadly passed away, as they were localizing Azure, Scott Tijerina or Tijerina, if I'm mispronouncing.
Really classy of NIS America to keep that in there, to include it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Chow, for going through your current thoughts and kicking off the discussion for the current state of Trails, as we all look forward to, at least look forward to Trails into Reverie later this year, and finally going to the official Kuro era, supposedly, at least here on the West. We'll still be a bit behind Japan, of course, but it feels like that gap is very slowly but steadily narrowing. So we'll see. Who knows when we'll see an official. We talked last week, of course, about East 10, also from Falcom, of course. And then one other tiny bit of Falcom news I'll just throw in here. This is, again, Japanese-focused news headline. But Adam's favorite Falcom game, Tokyo Xanadu. I actually don't know if that's true. Tokyo Xanadu EX is going to be releasing for Nintendo Switch in Japan on June 29th. So this is the version of the game that had an added epilogue and a PC port back in 2017. Will be making its way to Switch in Japan this summer.
I actually did a guide for Tokyo Xanadu. I don't have a bad time with this game, but it's very, I think the best term to describe it, it's very high mid. How's that?
It's high mid.
It's not insulting, but it's not, it's not like amazing, excellent. It's just kind of like,
I mean, it's one of the better Falcom soundtracks, Because
soundtrack is definitely good. It's like you can't really go wrong with.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, like, I will say that Falcom recently, like, some of their soundtracks aren't that great recently,
And know who to blame.
That's what I'm saying, that like Falcom now needs to like reach a bar where like their soundtracks are good again.
You're right, Chow. I do know who to blame. Kato.
High mid sounds like a statement that you'd say when like it's like Eurojank, only when Eurojank doesn't apply. it's high mid.
I don't like these terms. They don't fucking mean anything.
I'm not sure if I want to use the term Eurojank when we just had that thing about JRPGs like earlier this month.
That's a good point.
We say Eurojank.
You don't say you
say JRPGs affectionately.
Okay. Like, what is this now? Are we saying that like, oh, if you say KMMOs, Eurojank, and JRPGs are your races or something? I wasn't here for that podcast episode. But like for me, those are the like signifier terms that like make a point, communicate a point across efficiently in a very short manner.
I've always thought of them as like a heuristic. They're like a quick rule of thumb where you have to introduce the idea and then contextualize what you mean, rather than the term itself stating everything definitively. So if you say Eurojank, then the context of the conversation will determine whether you're saying it endearingly. And to be honest, it talks about whether you're talking about a game like Elex or a game like Elex 2. One is Eurojank and the other one is Eurojank. Jang.
But like I think that the dot divisor that if you say JRPG, you're racist is like to me is insane, frankly. But,
So it's a heuristic to introduce an idea, which then you dial down the intent with the rest of your context.
I don't think anyone reasonable is actually trying to say you're racist if you use the term JRPG. Just personally, I am no longer using that term just because I do understand the idea where it's like it's othering RPGs from Japanese developers, and it's like it's putting them in a box that they don't want to be in.
I mean, if I need to communicate something, like say if it's a turn-based RPG or is an RPG made in Japan, I will say JRPG. You know, I'm not gonna. Yeah, if you think badly about for me saying like characterizing like a game that like to communicate a point efficiently, you know, in a span of time, then so be it. You know, if I'm talking about a game that's made in Japan, you know, that's an RPG, and I just happen to say JRPG, you know, then so be it. You know, I'm not gonna that like.
Again, I'm only speaking for myself. I'm only speaking for myself.
I know, but I'm just saying. But like, for me, it's like a lot of it is like based on the intent of the person. I don't think a lot of people don't like say JRPG like with like a bad intent. In my opinion, there's certainly some, especially like, you know, people in that era, like when people talk about like the like 2013, 2014, and so forth. Like definitely there are some bad eggs in that era that like they use that term JRPG in an insulting way. But for some people, that's like say, oh, they hear JRPG when like a game
like,
from Japan.
Holy shit, that's exactly what I'm here for.
Exactly. You know, that could be a good thing for them, you know? Like, so I think it's not a bad term in my opinion. Like I said, it's more the intent of the person saying it, but the term itself, in my opinion, is not like bad.
On the other note, though, I remember seeing like around the same time this started a few weeks ago that somebody brought up this quote from the Octopath Traveler director, where he's like, when we make games, we don't set out to make JRPGs. We just set out to make RPGs.
Obviously, like, you know, when you're a game creator in Japan and you're developing something, they're not like thinking, oh yes, we're making a Japanese RPG. It's like, no, dude, they're fucking making a video game. Like, that's like a certain genre.
The only thing I would say is that when you say, oh well, people use like the term JRPG also as a positive, it's like, oh yeah, this is what I want from a JRPG. I can also see the like counter argument where it's like sometimes the developers, they don't want to be in that box. They're making a game and they don't want to have that baggage of, oh, it has to be a JRPG. It has to be part of this specific subgenre that's completely fucking arbitrary.
To me, it's just to explain a concept succinctly to the point, you know.
And
like,
some people,
like when I say JRPG, I'm not speaking for the developer. I'm not saying, oh, you know, like I'm not trying to put words in their mouth. It's just like when you're trying to communicate something to someone, it's not to be freaking racist. It's just say, oh, this is the kind of game that, like, you know, I might be into.
Just to be clear, I'm not calling anyone racist here. God,
I know you're not, but I'm just like to counter your point on that. It's not like when European developers say, "Oh, we're making a Eurojank game," you know, they're not saying Eurojank. They're making Elex or something.
I still maintain that the Elex 1 is worth playing, and Elex 2 was my biggest disappointment of last year.
But in other news, can we talk about Tokyo Xanadu?
Go play the Switch version when it releases in Japan.
Yeah, do not play the Vita version. I think the best thing they ever included in X is they upscale the difficulty, because in the original game you can't even die if you tried.
Yeah, for those who aren't familiar, Tokyo Xanadu is like a real-time action RPG dungeon crawler type of game. It's sort of a mix. It's not like a turn-based game like Trails, but it's not quite like full action RPG like an East game. It's there's like a dungeon element to it, which is a little bit different.
It's kind of like Zwei 2 because you have a bunch of crates you're busting up.
A partner that
you can tell. Like, I played the PC version, and I don't mean this too disparagingly, but it's like you have to kind of remember that this was a Vita game originally, so it's going to be pretty simple in like the layout and the design and whatnot. So, yeah.
Tokyo Xanadu is a game where I think it's legitimately good, but I think that conversely, like the more Falcom games you've played, maybe the less likely you are to enjoy it, just because there's so much, like there's so many references in that game where, like, you've played a shit ton of Falcom games, you realize There's like not a single like actually unique thing about this game's plot anywhere. It reuses so many different plot elements from other games, and there's like all of these references to other Falcom games literally everywhere, where it's just like it crosses a point from being, oh, that's a neat little reference, to, is there anything here that's actually a fresh or unique idea?
This is not really a spoiler, but I kind of like the relationship that forms between the two main characters.
Yeah.
Like, it's not romantic. They're kind of like, we will die for each other, but we're not necessarily. It's like kind of a good balance between like platonic and potentially romantic. But I think it's just a really good like.
Is it weird to say that? And is it weird to say that the sort of vibes I get is it's not romantic, but somehow it feels like they've been married for like 10 years?
Yeah, it's a sort of thing like where if the two characters said like, let's start dating, all right, or like let's go meet other people, all right, like it's believable either way.
I think,
like they're so in tune with each other.
That's a very nebulous concept, but I actually really kind of like that strong platonic, potentially but not requisite romantic kind of pairing, rather, because that is more interesting than just like these two are shipped, they're together, deal with it. I don't know.
I have a random question for you guys. Has anyone watched this anime called Buddy Daddies?
Yeah, dude, that's a cool show. Two dads.
The reason why I'm asking you is like, do you remember the bartender, Q? I think.
Yeah, Q or something.
Yeah, there's a teacher in Tokyo Xanadu, Goro Seki. He looks just like Q, and they have the same voice actor.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't think about that. Yeah. Okay.
Guy wears glasses, same brown hair, same haircut. It's like.
All right.
Also, Toa is in Tokyo Xanadu for some reason,
but it's not the same Toa, right?
Nope. It's Toa just like transplanted into another world.
Yep, and she's her
mascot.
A mascot character.
What if they put Toa in East 10?
She's gonna get murdered.
And no explanation. Just the character. Her name is Toa. She looks the same. She sounds the same.
It's fucking over if that's a point. It's over. It's so over.
The last game that we have earmarked here to talk about very quickly is not an RPG, but it's a I don't want to say it's recent release because it's still in beta, but something that Josh has been playing and has had a few thoughts on. We figured, why not? We can spend a little bit of time talking about it. That is Exoprimal. Now, I'm going to set the stage to how little I know about this game. To me,
let's go.
This is I've seen a little bit about this game back when it was announced. Multiplayer Dino Crisis is kind of like it's something to do with dinosaurs. Multiplayer focused mission based game. I don't know anything else about it.
Right, summoning raptors.
It is. It does have dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are involved. It is being made by Capcom. It is not Dino Crisis. When they first unveiled this game, everyone thought it was, and then they're like, "No, fuck you." And like, okay,
does it play like Dino Crisis?
It does not play like Dino Crisis.
If you tell me this plays like Dino Crisis 2, I'll be like totally sold on this game.
I mean, it does have an arcade quality to it, like Dino Crisis 2, but it's not like Dino Crisis 2 at all. Outside of like being more of an arcade game. Yeah, Exoprimal is this PvEVP project from Capcom, and they're holding an open beta for it. Me and a few friends have been checking it out. It's a pretty cool game so far, where basically the one mode that they've been really promoting in it is like this 5v5 mode, and there's like the Holy Trinity model. You have like your DPS characters, your tank characters, and your support characters, and like your character gets into these exosuits, and they all have different kits. They have different abilities. They have an ult, but they all play pretty differently in a pretty interesting way. Like your standard, like soldier character, your standard DPS class has like an assault rifle, has like a grenade launcher assault rifle that can use to like blast out dinos, and like their ult is like summoning like a whole arsenal of like missiles around them to like fire forward, and so forth. While like another like interesting cool character archetype that I enjoyed was like this exosuit called Murasame. It's like a samurai character, but unlike other like samurai archetypes in other games where the samurai is like kind of like a glass cannon of sorts. This one is like places that tank character in like the tank class, so they like to be in the front lines, up close to the dinos, slashing them with their sword, and the main gimmick of this samurai character is like they do like a 360 slash with their katana. They get aggro on the dinos, and then like you have like a counter stance where like you have like an EI stance where they place their katana back in its sheath as they're absorbing hits. And once they get a proper amount of hits, they do like a big uppercut that does a shitload of damage to like everything around it. And like powers up their katana and like goes like on a rampage with it. And like that's a really cool character archetype. But the flow of the game is like really weirdly, it's like interesting, and I don't know if I like it yet. Like in sorts of like I can see it getting repetitive. Where at first like the two teams of 5 are like they don't interact with each other directly. They're like at a race essentially. Like you go from point A to point B, like killing dinos as fast as possible around the map. You have like this watcher like NPC like guiding you around and like giving you updates saying you're going faster, you're going slower than like the enemy team, and like the whole phase of this part of the game with your team is like killing dinos as fast as efficiently as possible. And there'll be like certain points around that part of the match where like the enemies can kind of like interrupt each other. Like there's like these items called dominators where one of the enemy teammates will like summon like a dinosaur into your game and like don't take control of it, and like they'll be like to like mess with your team and like trying to slow you down as like you're trying to like whittle them down as well. And then most of the games that I've played have like been neck and neck, so like there's a nice pace to it where like if your guys are doing what you're supposed to, it'll be a pretty close game. And usually like after a certain point you'll go to like the final stage of the game, like a final mission of sorts. So like so far like this turns into like a different like sort of game where it'll be like sort of like Overwatch at times, where when you get transported to this final mission, like there's like a payload that all you have to like gather around and push very slowly to like the end goal. But the like if the enemies are on pace with you, they'll also be summoned in the same instance, where they also have to push a payload, and like you have to find the balance between like pushing together and like disrupting the enemy team, all while like dinos are being spawned all around the map and attacking both teams. And there'll be like certain times during like the in the map where like you can get dominators again and like interrupt them with like your own controller.
What's the team size? Is this like 4-player co-op teams or
5v5? Yeah, the only mode right now in the open beta is 5v5. And there's also like a different sort of like different final mission aside from like pushing the payload, where like you have like these hammers that you're trying to charge up. So like one of your teammates or you will wield the hammer, and you're trying to charge it up by like essentially just holding it, and then like if you beat up a lot of dinos with like the hammer smash, it'll like charge it up a lot, and you're trying to like charge it up to 100% to like smash down these nodes or pillars, and then like you go through like maybe 2 or 3 cycles of these and try to do this before like the enemy team. And then the final pillar is like contested in between both of those teams directly, where like it's either your team or the enemy hammer smashes down this final pillar. And so like it tries to like have this balance of like PvEVP, where like the first part of the match is like mainly PvE focused, kind of like a sort of like a time trial challenge of sorts, until like the final phase of the match, where usually you're pitted against the other team if it's like neck and neck. If you're so far ahead, then like it'll never get to that part where you just have to like if you're so far ahead, you just won't you'll just like kind of like automatically win if you like kind of do your objectives as fast as possible. It's been a really fun experience, because like I think about like Lost Planet 2 a lot when I play this game, because like the exosuits and their designs and like their kits are like all really fun and unique. With like all the several characters that I play, like there's like a crossbow demolitionist type person that like specializes on like nailing their sticky bombs on dinos to like do a lot of AoE damage. There's like this unique like flyer support character that does like waves of like healing that if it hits a dino or an enemy player, it like disrupts them, and they have like a black hole skill that like sucks in, has a vacuum effect, so like it's good for like getting a lot of like efficient kills if you place that down correctly. And I think a lot about like this game is really hard to sell, like this type of game, because it seems to be multiplayer focused, but like when you think about like the modern landscape of multiplayer focused games, like I don't know how this game will thrive, because like it is being sold out of the gate for $60. On top of that, it'll have like a battle pass system where you have a free battle pass, and if you spend a little bit more, you'll unlock the premium battle pass. And like supposedly the battle passes only have cosmetics in them, but it's supposed to get make you feel good about playing more, progressing. Like to me, like when I think about like multiplayer games that I like in the past, I like playing them because I just like playing the game experience, like Counter-Strike, for example, or like Quake or Unreal Tournament. Like I played them because I like playing the game, not necessarily to like I didn't need like an additional incentive to like have like a raise me account level, to get goodies for them. It's just like I just like playing them, I know this is also coming to Game Pass Day one as well for Xbox, so hopefully that'll like have, and this game will have like full crossplay across all the platforms it's releasing for, which is good. But I really hope that like this game finds a way to like succeed in like a meaningful way, because like what are the player numbers of this game like 6 months from now, a year from now? I just think about like even like a free to play game that I really like Gundam Evolution. Like it's even when you're a free game that has like that battle pass system and like that in-game monetization style, like you're still not free from like dwindling player numbers if like your content rollout isn't that interesting, or like if the schedule for content rollout isn't that interesting these days. That's kind of what you need to survive, is like something that really continuously like evolves at a like at a pretty speedy pace. When I think about like Halo Infinite and like how much I really enjoyed the multiplayer of that, and how quickly that died out, that interest, because like the content rollout, just it wasn't there. And I don't know if that like has been rectified, but it's just like I'm just like so disinterested in that game because of like the first impression that I got in the first few months when I was playing that multiplayer, and now when you think about Exoprimal, which is a really like neat and novel concept, and like has the bells and whistles to be like a really engaging and fun game, but because of the way they're rolling it out and the ways they're distributing it, it's just like, will this game find not only just a player base, but a player base that is willing to like stick with it for a good amount of time, so you're always like being matched up with like real players, because right now this game needs a community to survive, to like have matches essentially.
I know it's
So
not quite the when you were describing the gameplay and like the character based system in this game, it's not quite the same, but I kept thinking of games like Dead by Daylight, which is kind of an asymmetrical game where you pick a person to play against you. So this is a bit different because it's more team based. So that's why I guess where the Overwatch comparisons comes in. But I feel like they're kind of going for that audience where it's like it'll be on Game Pass and be like, hey, do you want to do a couple rounds of Exoprimal? And it'll just sort of be sort of that thing where hopefully they have the content stream where there'll be something new and exciting, whether it's a new class, new biome, different gameplay modes or tweaks or things like that, or that's going to really determine whether this game not only have a good like rollout both with the beta now and when version 1.0, but just so that continuous development focus of tweaks and updates.
It's like even then, like the only reason like my friends and I are like really playing this on like a lot of this open beta is because we don't even know if we're gonna get the full game, because a lot of them are like $60 is like kind of like a big ask for this kind of game. Like, are we gonna still play it?
And I guess and that reminds me, like sometimes I'll have friends who'll be like, hey, want to do a couple, and it's been months, but hey, do you want to do a couple rounds of Dead by Daylight? And it's like, sure, but I admit that I got that game for free on an Epic Game Weekly free thing,
right.
sort of thing where So I guess you kind of have the Game Pass, or if you've already subscribed, then you play it not for free, but with your current, burden or whatever. So maybe the Game Pass is kind of a key key strategy here for this game.
Yeah, well, yeah. Hopefully that works out for them, because I think it's a really they have a really cool concept on their hands, and because of the weather reports are done by like dinosaurs. Like, oh, today's like a mild chance of like raining raptors on Thursday.
I appreciate the camp, actually. In general, not just for dinosaur games, but games in general. I feel like, oh, no one will take us seriously if we don't take ourselves seriously. Like, no, I like games that allow themselves to be silly or goofy. Even though I haven't played it, but I do like how Hi-Fi Rush kind of seemed to like, yes, we are a video game for fun. We have a story, we have a narrative, but we don't have to treat this like high art for it to be a really quality thing.
There's a balance to it. Yeah. You can still be a video game and still have a fun way to tell your story and premise and all that. You just don't have to have a mocking tone to it, I'd say.
Yeah, there's a chance, there is the propensity to go too far and just take yourself not seriously enough. But lean it more towards the center and less towards the grim dark or the super serious.
Yeah, the tone of this is I think it strikes it just right. It's stupid, but it's sure, why not? And I think the technology behind it is really, really cool. This game is not afraid to spawn tons and tons of dinosaurs on screen at once, and the performance on my PC has been doing well for it. It's handling it pretty well, and it's just you don't see enough a lot of dinosaur games these days, especially not on this scale, and just how much are on screen at once. It's cool.
Well, that was kind of a bit of a strange lineup for the games we've been playing section, but thank you, Josh, for sharing your thoughts on both Atlus Fallen, the preview opportunity that you had, as well as some initial thoughts on Exoprimal, which is not quite in our wheelhouse, and we likely won't get another chance to talk about it. So kind of cool to give it a little bit of a look in here. And then, of course, Chow for giving us an opportunity to talk about Trails to Azure, kind of a recent release in all respects. Well, not in all respects, in a very particular respect for the Western English audience that we kind of skip because most of us have already played it. So it kind of gives us an opportunity to look back at where Trails is in the West, and of course look forward to both Reverie and Nayuta later this year. The news lineup this week is a little bit lighter, but before we go into that, there are two features that went up on the site this last week that are both kind of just interesting op-eds. And one is by Adam here, and one is by James. Adam had the opportunity to play through one of his favorite games, Valkyrie Profile. Again, this game released late last year, I believe in December, for the PlayStation Network. And Adam was able to play through that game again on his PlayStation 5. And took the opportunity not to review it, because reviewing a port like that's a bit silly, but just kind of revisit the game and then write up his thoughts on why he thinks that Valkyrie Profile has had the staying power it's had and been so well regarded. And when people play games like Valkyrie Elysium, wondering whether it does or doesn't quite hit the same vibe, the same thoughts, the same space that Valkyrie Profile did back in the day. So I don't know if you had any additional thoughts or more clarity that you wanted to put on your feature, or just kind of let it speak for itself.
Not really. Square Enix gave us a review code for it, but it's actually I read the RP Gamer review for their review of Valkyrie Profile, and it was also one of their writers' favorite games. And they even said how do you review one of your favorite games that's been one of your favorite games for 20 years? And I'm exactly, so I'm not going to. So I didn't review it. Basically, the angle that I took was that I really like Valkyrie Profile, but one of the reasons why I really like it is that it's just so different from almost any other RPG, even still. Are there some similarities you can make between it and other games? Obviously, yes. But there are just so many things it does that are just so unique and standalone that no other game is really emulated well. Some have tried, but none have matched it, or they missed the point. So I just kind of basically wanted to highlight its unique flair that no other game is replicated.
Well, we talked a bit about both the usefulness and the uselessness of having titles like JRPG or things like that, and a more direct way to kind of introduce the concept of what a game is saying this game is like X other game. You have a JRPG inspired game, like an indie or something, and you might say, well, it is like Chrono Trigger, but, or it's like Golden Sun, but, where Valkyrie Profile, you're like, well, nothing else is quite landed here. And I like one of your sentences in your feature. It's not turn-based, round-based, phase-based, grid-based, cooldown focus, character action, party action. Like, it's not any of these things. It's kind of its own thing, which I'm sure there have been some projects that have tried to tap into that a little bit, but
Indivisible
not
comes
quite.
to mind.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Indivisible is a fake RPG.
What?
There you go.
We hit a nerve.
And then we found an FRPG.
FRPG.
Yeah.
But seriously, Indivisible is weird in that like you barely get any like stat ups as you play the game. It's that like once you beat certain bosses, like all your stats, like HP, damage, and all that will just kind of like raise. Like,
oh, wow. So I didn't know that you heard it here first, folks. We're coining the name of a new genre, including Indivisible, Paper Mario Sticker Star, and Paper Mario Color Splash FRPG.
Right?
That's my favorite genre. No. But anyways, there was a couple of comments. Obviously, they're not taking it seriously. We're like, well, what about Valkyrie Profile 2? And it's just like, actually, Valkyrie Profile 2 is much more traditional.
Yeah, it's pretty different. Yeah.
I do think Valkyrie Profile 2, if you, I think it's still also a very good game. And if you are specifically talking about like combat mechanics, 2 is probably better. But just like structurally, it's a much more of a traditional RPG.
Yeah, with the story just linear instead of like the original where you could just kind of wander around however.
It also gets kind of silly with like the timey-wimey future past stuff, honestly. But it's still a very good game. But I think it's more, standard fare in how it's structured.
The one mysterious question: has anyone played the DS game and could talk about it? Because I have.
The Covenant of the Plume. It's a good game.
It's also pretty good. Yeah,
it's an SRPG.
Wow. In terms of like pure story, it might be the best one. Like just front to back.
Yeah.
It's really good.
You should play it, Charlie. You'd like it.
Okay, I'll give it a shot sometime.
Yeah.
Because I have no idea how much time I spent on retro gaming. Like recently, I think I just spent like $400 buying Game Boy Advance.
There we go. That's a good stuff.
Purposes. Oh man.
We know you're deep down in the rabbit hole. It's okay. Yeah. I accept you. I don't know if anyone else.
I was reading my article. I was reading my article as I after I wrote it. And one of my sentences I say like Valkyrie Profile sequel and spin-off. And by that I mean Silmeria and Covenant of the Plume. And I kind of I didn't forget about it. Like I guess Valkyrie Elysium could have been the spin-off I was talking about, but it wasn't. It's like when I say Valkyrie Profile spin-off, the one that comes to mind is Covenant of the Plume.
Yeah, because you say Profile, I've said Valkyrie spin-off, then it could be like either.
Yeah,
but if you say Profile,
Covenant of the Plume is a Valkyrie Profile spin-off, or Elysium is just a Valkyrie spin-off.
God, I hate names so much.
Have you Elysium yet as well, Adam?
Yeah, I don't really like it.
It's
not like terrible, but I think my main thing with Elysium is that it like tries to retread Profile.
When it does the flower field scene, it's like, oh
yeah,
it's so
if you have any originality here, like come on.
So when I played Elysium, but I have not played Valkyrie Profile, but I've been around, of course, Adam, and seen plenty of it. That I'm aware of a lot of those, like the true story and how you access it and things like that. And I remember I was streaming Valkyrie Elysium and I was watching, and I was going through the flower field, like its version of it. I'm like, has this earned this? Is this like
no?
It kind of just like it's so weirdly out of nowhere with how you access it too. It's so dumb.
What is
the Valkyrie Elysium flower field scene? Because Armand's like, you want to go somewhere, and
he's
it's like
standing there. The final level.
The final level. That is so funny.
Reminds me of watching this guy when I was in Japan playing the pachinko machine for the flower scene in Metal Gear Solid 3.
That's so good. Oh man, if I was there.
He earned it. He spent his good money on that pachinko machine.
How much money do you think he spent?
I have no idea. But
I was joking with Adam. I was like, you should write a preview of Valkyrie Profile for your piece. Can you imagine that? It's like, you know what? Why is Tri-Ace, the makers of Star Ocean, making traditional or a Norse RPG? What are they doing? Are they up to it? Do they have the chops for it?
The other feature that went up on the site this week is from James, and this is basically following up on a piece of news from last month that IGN Japan, I believe, is the primary source of this, where they had an interview, a back and forth with Hironobu Sakaguchi, talking specifically about Fantasian. Now, Fantasian is a game that we've talked about on our site and this podcast in a few different contexts. Very specifically, it ended up winning our Game of the Year award for 2021. And in general, it's a game that we all, I won't say all, but in general, think pretty highly of. Admittedly, it kind of released in like a really good time for it, 2021, in terms of its competition. But of course, with the albatross around its neck, as James has framed it, is that it's an Apple Arcade exclusive. Though I know I played it on my iPhone. I believe Adam and James both played it on Apple TVs. Thought pretty highly of it. Well, IGN Japan, as they were talking to Sakaguchi, brought up the idea about, what's next for Fantasian. Nothing has been decided. There is no direct news here, but Sakaguchi basically expressed interest in realizing that people are interested in this game, potential for a follow-up of some sort or a PC release, and Sakaguchi saying that he would like to meet their expectations and continue working as hard as possible. So very careful language about saying he recognizes, he acknowledges these requests, hasn't announced anything explicitly, which James has then taken and saying, hey, if this game can, by some stretch, make its way to a platform like PC or console, the Switch, PlayStation, whatever, that it would be something that would be conducive to being able to share thoughts on this game without the Apple subscription being the caveat that you always have to work through. So I'll go ahead, and I don't want to put too many words in James's mouth. Just talking about your opinion piece here about Fantasian potentially making its way to PC or other platforms.
And one thing I do mention in the article, and it's actually something that made me start thinking more about preservation in the wake of the eShops for the 3DS and Wii U going down later this month. It's very important that Fantasian gets ported, just because if one day Apple Arcade just shutters, there would be no way for anyone, even if you had already played Fantasian, to be able to play it ever again. So unless it gets ported to a different platform or becomes available for purchase in general anywhere, it's at very real risk of just becoming lost media eventually.
I wonder how is Apple Arcade doing these days anyway? I haven't really checked up on it recently.
I don't know, because it's Apple. They don't really generally talk about how things are doing. They kind of beat to their own drum and will walk to the beat of their own drum and whatnot.
Can I play Fantasian on the Apple Watch? Can that hook up to Apple Arcade?
And I remember I was reading, so both of these features, the Fantasian potentially going to another platform feature and Adam's docu profile feature, were both shared on our Twitter page and gotten a fair bit of response, mostly positive, with a few people like to be as least charitable as possible. And I saw a comment where it was like, man, I don't understand the high praise that Fantasian gets. And it's one of those things where it's like, I want to try to temper ourselves, and like Fantasian I do think is a genuinely good game, but I also want to avoid that kind of white whale thing where it's like, trust me, go get Apple Arcade subscription and play it, because everyone's worth on whether or not they should tip in is going to be different to calibrate.
To answer the for Fantasian, I think it's like a very the window of people who will appreciate part 2 is like,
it's really hard. It is like one of the hardest RPGs I've played, and people probably need to be ready to expect that heading in.
I wonder if they port it to other platforms, they'll offer like an easy mode, but like as a new feature,
Is it harder
I think they said something like they didn't want to. I'm trying to remember where I saw that.
Yeah, basically, because some re-releases do offer like, hey, we added like an easy mode to make it.
Well, if it comes out on PC, people can just cheat engine if they want to.
It kind of ruins it, but yeah. But I agree that like that's the fun part about Fantasian Part 2, is because like it actually like it's like a weirdly like crazy difficult spike out of nowhere, and you kind of have to start thinking outside the box for the things.
Fantasian Part 2 is the sort of game.
So many different like boss battles for that are all pretty unique, and like you have to approach them very carefully. And some of those battles, like you have like no wiggle room in terms of how to like approach it to succeed. If you make like one wrong turn, you're dead.
It's also one of those things that like it's funny because like it's like for some of those also it's like not even just like making the most out of your turn to survive, but also when you decide to attack for some of those things, like first like you actually have time to time the attack and account for animations going on.
I remember at the time the way I put it was it's not enough to just know what you need to do. It's like you need to know what you need to do, and then also it's not as much as okay, you know what you need to do, you've instantly won the fight. It's like you know what you need to do, it's still going to be fucking difficult to actually execute on it.
Yeah. And we all agree that the best character in battle, like once you get to that point, is the tool kid Ez, right?
Yep.
Like his,
once you have
gotta get those buffs. Gotta get those buffs.
Once you have the items there
to get the buffs in the multiple turns in a row, you need them.
But when people would ask the question, like, is Fantasian worth Apple Arcade? That's a hard question to answer because it's like, well,
because
if you have an iPhone, then sure. But if you have an iPad, sure. Like if you have something already that you can play it on, then yeah, it's worth it. But I can also completely like sympathize with people where it's like, even if it's only $5 a month, it's like it's a fairly long RPG. I think it took me like 60 hours to beat it.
Well, I remember when that game was coming out, I know like at least half of us on like the site in general were stupid. Like, we'll just get an Apple TV to go play the game.
The weird thing is it actually doesn't run that well on Apple TV.
Yeah.
Like, how many times did it crash for you, Adam? If you remember, because it definitely crashed at least 5 or 6 times.
It crashed. It just it got really sluggish several times.
It definitely crashed for me.
This was the new model of the Apple TV.
Yeah. Because I remember like specifically a lot of us were like, okay, Fantasian Part 1's released, but I'm not sure if I want to play it yet because there's like rumors of a new Apple TV like coming out. And if I'm going to play it, I might as well get the new model. And then the new model came out and it's like, perfect. Right around the time when Part 2 hit too.
But yeah, obviously there's no news here. That's why it's an op-ed feature and not a news headline. But Fantasian is a game that we all thought pretty highly of. Though with the specific things that we talked about, it's a very challenging game. It's the sort of game where if you like losing to a boss fight 3 times, tweaking your strategy, and then coming out on top and feeling that sense of exhilaration, that's Fantasian in spade. But if you don't like to be inconvenienced, then Fantasian is a little bit not quite in that same ballpark. But we have James's feature talking about what could be brought to the table if Fantasian was unshackled from its Apple Arcade purgatory from where it currently exists in Apple Arcade as a subscription only game.
It makes me wonder too, just like, man, people like a lot of people are going to complain about Fantasian Part 2 a lot for sure. 10,000%.
It is not a game at all. This is not a game that has like the widest of appeals.
Yeah. It is definitely at some point it boils down to, do you have a lizard brain?
That's not untrue.
Do you have the correct brain worms to appreciate what this game is setting out to do? Like me, when I get to when I got in like halfway through Part 2 and I realized there's dungeon RPG dungeons in this, and I just like absolutely popped off.
Like the perfect like mindset that I have for like boss battles in that game is I put the image in voice channel chat, but it's that meme image of the wavelength of going, we're back and it's so over. Just like that wavelength of like, oh my god, things are going so well. The next turn it's like, oh god, it's so over. Then you pull off a fucking crazy arc move on it. It's like, oh god, we're so back. We're gonna win this. That was my mentality for like 90% of bosses at Part 2.
Like, I got this. Oh shit, I'm dead. Oh wait, I'm fine. Oh shit, I'm dead.
Yeah, it is basically it captures that feel like, oh shit, I'm so fucking stupid. Then you fire off an attack and you got off the right angle, so like it hit a certain way. You're like, oh my god, I'm fucking genius. We're so bad.
And with that, we'll go into the news section of this podcast. Not a lot of major headlines here, but this one that I have listed out first is potentially pretty interesting, and not out of nowhere because it was teased last year, but surprise, we are not in the era of past Persona 5 spin-offs milking, if you want to state it a certain way. People are wondering whether we'd see Persona 6 introduction or news or teasing with the 25th anniversary. No. We thought maybe this year we'd start to see something. Well, instead we got the full details for Persona 5 the Phantom X, or maybe this is the Phantom Cross, which is a mobile Persona project being developed by Perfect World Games for the Chinese market. So a lot of new releases here for a bunch of artwork. It's an original side story. We've basically a fully fledged Persona 5 title with a completely new cast, takes place in Tokyo. I don't know if we have any details to if we're going to see any sort of specific tie-ins to Persona 5 for Persona 5 the Phantom Cross for this game. But it is a free-to-play title with in-app purchases. So deduce from that what you will. Along with the announcement of this game officially, we got a concept trailer for the game, as well as a gameplay trailer, which the gameplay trailer basically makes it look and appear as close to a traditional Persona 5 experience as possible.
Well, the world can never have enough Persona 5 spin-offs and new projects and so forth. I kind of just have very neutral feelings about it because the gameplay videos, the concept trailer that they showed, it's like this basically is trying to like bring that entire Persona 5 experience, but to like a mobile platform. But I know like it's also gonna be, like the beta test for it in China is also gonna be held on PC as well, but it's not officially coming to PC, so to speak. So it's kind of a weird situation. But it has like it's kind of weird because I look at the main character design of this game. It looks like my friends and I have succinctly described the new main character design as like a lame Tatsuya. It looks like Tatsuya, but like a lamer version of Tatsuya from Persona 2.
The Velvet Room attendant looks great though.
Yeah, the Velvet Room attendant looks interesting. One of the things that really stuck out to me is like this kind of like this. I don't know if they're gonna use this voice actor going forward, but like it does give a new voice to Igor in this game because Isamu Tanonaka passed away sadly when Persona 5 was coming out. So they're still like on the search for like a new Igor voice actor, and like Igor sounds very different in this game. So I wonder if that's I don't know who the new voice actor is for Igor officially, but this might be an indicator of like who they might be using in future Persona games for Igor. He is going to show up because he's kind of like a staple in Persona games. Other than that, it shows off kind of the design for like the main or one of the main characters, like a heroine, like it's sort of like it kind of resembles Chie a little with her getup, and then like the mascot character, like kind of the Teddy or the what was the cat Morgana. The Morgana equivalent instead is like an owl character that has like a cooler persona because their persona is like a mech samurai cat thing or owl samurai rather, and that looks cool. But it's very basically mimicking a lot of like what Persona does. You go around, you explore the town, forge links, and then there's like a metaverse aspect to it where they're like kind of exploring dungeons. It looks to it's hard to say like this game's actually doing anything like innovative actually, because when I watched that trailer, like the gameplay trailer, I'm like, this looks like almost exactly like Persona 5 different characters and like the same sort of like environments and flow to Persona 5. And you do see some other characters teased in that trailer, but I don't know exactly how they're gonna like. Obviously, there's a free to play game. Like, what are you rolling for? Obviously, what's the gacha aspect of this game? What's the monetization like in this game? What are they doing? Like, It's they're like Sega and Atlus's P Studio are like in a supervisory role in this game, so they are somewhat involved, but not directly. Obviously, and then like when it comes to like the main character design, like Soejima is involved to some extent on the art for this game, but not like in a major way, just like here and there. But other than that, it's like sure, I'm interested to see like how this plays out. I don't know if I'm like gonna play it. It's hard. It's Chinese mobile games are actually like difficult to like play like officially because some of them may ask for like proof of like Chinese residency or like an identification number or something to like verify that like you're in China and all sorts of stuff. So I don't know if
think
there's
they have like different restrictions. Like, kids have basically they're not allowed to play more than like 1 hour of gaming.
Oh yeah, they recently implemented that too. That restriction as well. Yeah.
Yeah, because I get where the government's coming from. But that shouldn't be their responsibility. That's the parents' responsibility. But
they tease that Joker is gonna show up in this game, of course, and like they'll collab with like the Persona 5 crew in some way in this game. But it like if anything, like the main thing that like people will like point to in this game is like look at all the cool art, look at all the cool Persona designs and all the cool character design. I think that's kind of like the main takeaway from a Western perspective on this game. It's gonna be hard to like play this game officially, on this side of the world.
And it's having a not quite a beta test.
Infiltration test.
Yeah, so later this month for the Chinese market for PC and Android devices. So maybe that opens up some possibility for being able to access it for those that are super interested. I was actually reading some comments on the Gamatsu news post for this, and most of them are thinking either they're bemoaning like, come on, aren't we past Persona 5? I want to see Persona 6. There's about a third of people who say, okay, this is interesting. I want to figure out how I can get access. And there's certain people, like I've seen a few mock-ups about like, well, here's how the game's actually going to be played when what sort of stamina system is there, or having some sort of currency, or I think the stupidest, but I get it, meme image that I saw was like trying to date a person, and if you don't have enough currency, you have to friend zone them. But if you've got enough currency, you can actually say that you want to date them.
I saw that. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
Damn, it sounds like real life, actually.
Well, then again, yeah, it's not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But you like my image that I put in the voice channel chat?
Yeah. If you're listening to the podcast, just scroll through my Twitter for a little bit and you'll see this.
It's basically all the fucking past Persona 5 game releases, and it's a meme image like, what kind of gamer are you? You're a prehistoric gamer who played the original Persona 5 release, an ancient gamer who played the dancing spin-off, a retro gamer if you played the Royal release, old school gamer though if you played the Muso Striker spin-off, and you're a cool new school gamer if you're playing this Phantom Persona 5 the Phantom X. Now you are in with the in crowd.
I still have Persona 5 on my Steam Deck. I would play it.
But you're a retro gamer.
Yeah, I'm retro. That checks out. Why did I put Persona 5 the Phantom X? That's the first headline. I don't know.
Look, we always celebrate Persona 5 here.
Mm.
It is Atlus's true RPG, unlike Sega.
Where's the Sega Super game?
I'm giving you a segue, Brian.
How am I supposed to take this?
The Shin Chronicle thing is Sega's true RPG.
Okay, that's later in the list, though. I have that near the very bottom. Okay, well, we'll go into that. So, I can't keep track of Sega. They've got like their mega game, whatever you call it, their true RPG. They before they announce their projects, they have to give them like these very strange and eclectic.
Well, they had their true RPG.
Yeah. All right. So, Shin Chronicle, which is a choose your adventure RPG that released last year in Japan in March, is going to be shutting down on May 31st. That's my birthday. So about 14 months after it first launched, Sega kind of also announced basically the schedule lead up for the shutdown of Sin Chronicle? Like, at what point are purchases disabled? At what point is the final story going to wrap up? And then when will the service end? And
this was actually a really high profile project for Sega in terms of like, there's a mobile game that only released in Japan, of course, but like when you look at like the people involved in this game is like kind of crazy. Like in terms of names, like the main composer was Kevin Penkin, very very big composer in Japan, very popular. Then you had like guest composers of basically every freaking possible like famous Japanese composer that you can think of, like when it comes to Kenji Ito, Masashi Hamauzu, Yoko Shimomura, Masato Koda, Yasunori Mitsuda, Yuzo Koshiro. Like they all like pitched in like and then like when you're talking about like voice actors, Chao Aoyuki on it, Yuichi Nakamura, Kanahana, Zawa, Junichi Suwabe,
all the popular ones,
Sagita, Hikaru Midorikawa, like it's just like it was a big like a lot of resources were spent on this game, obviously, to make it happen. Like the basic appeal of this game when they first pitched it, like in Japanese magazines, was like this was a true role playing experience, a true RPG. This it gives you like real choices. Like who like final choice, like who will live, who will die. There'll be no do overs of like what you do in this RPG. Depends on like what choices you make. I never played it myself, but apparently it wasn't good enough to like last a year.
I heard it was supposed to be was it like a sequel to their gacha
Chain Chronicle.
Chain Chronicles. Because Chain Chronicles was supposed to be like their more successful ones. And I actually bought an art book of Chain Chronicles because
Chain Chronicles is still alive. Like
the art looks nice.
That's still in service too. So it's kind of weird and kind of funny that like the follow up to it is like, hey, yeah, we're bringing the heat once again. It's like, oh, never mind. But it's
what if now hear me out here. What if the way they actually end this game is they kill off a very important NPC and then you just see this?
Let's see. Okay, so James posted an image on the voice channel chat here, and it reads, "With this character's death, the thread of prophecy is severed. Restore a saved game to restore the weave of fate, or persist in the doomed world you have created."
Is that the cops in the background?
That's I have my window open, so yeah, the cops are getting out to get Sin Chronicle.
They're sending cops after you for talking shit about this game.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a story as old as time at this point. But another mobile game, getting its end of service announcement. It's like, yeah, it obviously didn't, achieve many of the things it set out to do. And they're gonna try again. I'm sure with another mobile game in the future, to see if they can try to make it profitable once more. What are you gonna do?
Yeah. Is that the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing and expect different results?
I mean, for businesses in this space, yes. They're gonna continue to try to make something new that will hopefully bring in the cash, a lot of cash. Which it's not.
Well, as long as if you get that one hit after 6 failures, that's all you want.
Oh, that's. I don't know, one hell of a 1 year anniversary announcement for those players. I bet it's like, yeah, well, shit, nice first year anniversary announcing the end of service. It's tough. It's
oversaturated nowadays.
It's very oversaturated. We've spoken about it here again and again, and we're going to continue to talk about like significant closures. We don't. If we were to go over every single game that like got an end of service announcement, especially if they're like Japanese only mobile games, we'd be having like a 5-hour podcast every week.
Well, I remember Gamatsu went a little bit viral on one particular week in early February or late January when like 7 live service games all announced shut down like within the same week or something like that. Now, a couple of them were ones that like were very, very small time, admittedly, but some were like Sony backed things like Crossfire X or something like that. Like not just gacha games, but like games as a service
games in general.
Titles,
yeah.
You just gotta have that one hit.
And I wonder if like it makes me kind of scared. It's like, will Exoprimal join that list one day? Because inevitably.
I think it just sucks when you see the game that you play closed down. If it's other games that you don't even touch, it's just like whatever. But
what are you talking about, Chow? Me and my friends pray for Princess Connect Redive's global version to like close down every day.
Nah.
We pray for it.
Okay, well, how about Nier? I mean, they're cutting off the English voice acting for the Nier Reincarnation.
I don't play Nier. Like I do not play Nier. Hell no.
That's a signal that death is coming soon, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, I'm not sure if death is coming soon, but they're definitely committing less resources to it because they can't justify, putting in the current amount of resources that they have been putting into it. So obviously, it's probably not meeting some sort of threshold or profitability that they want. So yes, that does say that is they're reprioritizing the resources elsewhere.
I just remember like in Dragalia Lost, it was like, we're gonna reduce the amount of voice acting content. Behold, there it is.
But that was always that's how the Dragalia Lost like launched. Where like the English acting was always kind of shot in the foot from the get go. Like where side stories in Dragalia Lost were always fully voiced in Japanese, especially like when it comes to like just like kind of like the character episodes. I think they were fully voiced. I can't remember, but definitely like events like were fully voiced in Japanese. Like in English, they were not for whatever reason, and that was always true. I think from the get go, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but I remember like as time went on, it's like there was that one time they start even like cutting it back on the Japanese.
Yeah, even
then they said, we're bringing it back because we got a lot of backlash for it.
I mean that depends on the time frame. Like if that was COVID time frame, then yeah, a lot of Japanese mobile games like had to like cut back on like voice acting temporarily because of COVID. There couldn't be recording sessions that could be held like that could be held safely. Like even Granblue had that where like
they had that for a while. They had one event that was completely unvoiced.
Yeah. So.
But they actually listed who the voice actor was going to be, but the event was not voiced at all.
That's actually pretty funny that they listed the voice actor. It's like well, it's a kind of like a make good notice. Like we'll get back to you on this.
Yeah, and the events are timed. So
yeah, that's weird. Then yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, that's true. That's weird. But yeah, we're getting off time. But yeah, it's just wanted to point. Just wanted to bring to attention that, like, Sega's self-proclaimed true RPG. Well, I guess that means RPGs are dead then, if the true one is going out of service.
Okay, so the rest of the news here is a little bit more high profile, but even then, not quite. So we have some details here. We talked about the announcement and the May release date for Fuga Melodies of Steel 2. CyberConnect has released a few more details about the gameplay systems of the upcoming game. And the main thing here is, I remember we were talking about this game when it was announced, about obviously a key component of the first game was the soul cannon mechanic, and obviously how you're disincentivized from using it if you want to get the quote-unquote best ending. And obviously the sequel kind of is in a state where it was presumably never used because all the characters return. The way that the soul cannon is implemented in Fuga Melodies of Steel 2 is a bit differently. I'll read this directly from the press release just because, I don't know, the way that this is phrased is very kind of bleak. The soul cannon is a deadly weapon that can take down powerful foes with a single blow, but it comes at the cost of a child's life, so avoid using it as much as possible. However, upon detecting danger, the AI known as Hacks will randomly select a child to be sacrificed and initiate the soul cannon countdown sequence all on its own. You must defeat all enemies before it's too late.
So this is actually kind of, as morbid as it is, it's kind of dope because it's essentially the plot of Fuga 2 as it is that the original tank that you used in the first game has gone haywire and has kidnapped half of the original cast. And you're basically trying to chase it and like put both a stop to the tank and try and rescue those kids. So the tank you're actually in for the second game is the tank that the big villain of the first game used, and so the AI that's trying to force you to use the soul cannon is actually literally just like the remnants of the like memories from the villain from the end of Fuga 1, which I assume was like I guess like integrated into the tank like during the final boss battle or something. It's kind of wild.
Don't think about it too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is a really cool like gameplay tweak that really like incentivizes like being the soul cannon being a more relevant mechanic in the game that the player is forced to interact with. So now that you are placed on a timer and like there's a secondary system that that can be used to like kind of offset it a little at a cost. Like they have this new system called the Managarm.
Yeah, because it also means that it forces you to like even if like because the only way you can like recover the kid that you use in the Managarm is at an intermission point where there's only like 2 per stage. Because there's one in the middle and then there's one at the very end right before a boss battle.
Yeah.
Assuming it's the same as like Fuga 1, that means that for every time that you have to do that to avoid losing a kid for good, that's one less kid you're going to be able to use for however many battles until you get to the next intermission point. And then you're going to have to spend resources during that intermission that could be spent elsewhere, like upgrading aspects of the tank, upgrading kids, just to get to bring them back into the fray. And like the best aspect of Fuga was always like the forced like resource like management. And one of the things I noticed and other people noticed is that if you were really good at managing your resources early in the game, by the time you're like halfway through the story, the edge was kind of gone because you're already a bit overpowered.
Right.
But it feels like this is kind of forcing it to always be an aspect of the game. And hopefully it's enough to kind of keep you on your toes for the entirety of the playtime. And I'd also imagine probably Fuga 2 would most likely be a more difficult game than the first game. I feel like since the sequel, they're probably going to balance it where it's like, you've played the first one.
You can't just have Kyle and Boron just fucking steamroll everything.
Yeah. But anyways, between the story aspects of the game and seeing the really wild new designs for like the enemies are going up against, they look like weirdly like organic. It's like, ugh. Yeah. It's like, I loved Fuga 1's gameplay and I thought the story was all right, but as far as CyberConnect 2 goes, before Fuga, I would say that most of their games, if you played them, you weren't really in it for the gameplay, you were in it for the vibes and the story and the world building. For as good as Fuga was, I feel like the story was kind of a weaker aspect of it. So seeing there be more of an edge to this game and whatnot, I'm actually really excited to see how things go in the plot. Because it's like, who fucking knows where it's going to go? It's like the first one was a relatively straightforward plot. It was like a war story, but it's like this one, it's like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, it's pretty weird now for the state of things. So yeah, this is exciting. Like I'm glad to see that. Like more than anything, like my main thing about going to the sequel is like I really wonder how they're going to switch up the gameplay because the first one was a neat concept, but I think they could really they have a lot of different ways to expand it, and I'm really interested to see how they do that. And like this is kind of the first like wave of it. Like okay, they're really starting to switch things up.
Yeah, and I mean we're not too far away from it. We're like 2 months, and I don't know like how like early they're going to be sending out review code or whatever. So who knows?
Yeah,
but cool. Yeah, very excited for it. I'm glad that this is going to be on Game Pass because it means that they've already made their money back. Otherwise, God, if this wasn't on Game Pass, they're screwed because isn't this coming out like a day before? Well, it's Tears of the Kingdom.
Oh God, is it? Jesus.
Yeah, like it's May 20 something. Let me check really quick. It's May 11th, and Tears of the Kingdom comes out May 12th.
Well, hopefully people don't sleep on this. Hopefully it is a really cool game, and hopefully, I'm really looking forward to it. But I know a lot of people are like, all right, we'll get to it after Tears of the Kingdom, which is understandable.
So when everyone is playing Tears of the Kingdom, James will be playing Fuga. And
no. When everyone's playing Tears of the Kingdom, I'll be playing Tears of the Kingdom because I'm gonna be reviewing this.
Wait, what am I gonna be playing?
I said Atlus Fallen.
Oh shit! Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if like my thing is gonna be upgraded to review code. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I'm
assuming I'll be playing this before Tears of the Kingdom comes out. Assuming.
Yeah, Adam, we're assuming we're gonna be done with our games and we're gonna be totally free for Tears of the Kingdom, and we'll put up a do not disturb sign. Oh yes. But yeah, it's looking to be pretty busy.
The last announcement here before we go into sales updates and some release or delay dates is about a new Touhou project game. And I'm going to need a little bit of James's expertise here to understand this. So XSEED has announced that they are going to be publishing Touhou New World worldwide as a digital release for Nintendo Switch and PC via Steam on July 13th. And Touhou New World will also come to PlayStation 4 and 5 at a later date. This is being developed by the same studio behind Touhou Scarlet Curiosity, which released back in 2016. And then XSEED, as the publisher, released a new announcement trailer with coinciding with this announcement here. However, for the thumbnail for this trailer, they call it a fan-made project, and that language is also in the press release at all. So I'm just curious about the use of that language here being picked up by XSEED, but calling Touhou New World a fan-made project.
Okay. If you're not familiar with Touhou,
games technically fan-made.
No, not necessarily. Just Touhou as a franchise is I don't know. Basically, the mainline Touhou games, which are developed by Zune, are like all shoot 'em ups. But the thing with Touhou is that Zune has basically given people free reign to do essentially whatever the hell they want with the characters and world. So that's why you see a bunch of like Touhou, like Dojin, like fan-made comics, fan-made works, videos, music, and why, especially on PC, you see a shit ton of like Touhou fan games that are allowed to be sold because Zune has literally is on the record saying, I give people like every right to make fan games and charge money for it.
Yeah, it's all completely open. He doesn't like enforce he doesn't like go after people for using his IP. Do whatever they want with it. It's all completely open with his blessing, pretty much.
It's basically socialized. Really cool. It's basically socialized game development.
It's awesome, to see like there are more fan-made Touhou projects by like 100 times over than like new mainline Touhou games, but that's completely okay because I imagine for
even canon. I was gonna say some of them are even canon, like the
yeah. Like I imagine for Zune, it's all about just spreading like the world and the characters and like the IP, like awareness of the IP in general. It's not all about just like feeding back as the mainline. It's just just seeing, enjoying what people make out of it, like the premise characters made. It is cool, Like I know a lot of people that like. It's sort of like it's gonna be weird. It's gonna be a weird comparison, but like there's usually like some Touhou games that like will resonate with people, even though they're not into like the mainline Touhou like games. Like there'll be like Touhou like strategy RPGs that resonate with people. Like there's almost like a Super Robot Wars S Touhou game. Like people really like in that space, and it reminds me of like Warhammer. Like for like there'll be like some genres of Warhammer games like people really resonate with, but don't really care about like the overall Warhammer world itself, right? So it's just, it being a fan-made game is like the least surprising thing because that's like 99% of the whole games at this point.
Well, okay. Now I understand a little bit more about the context there. Yeah. As for this game specifically, New World, obviously the announcement trailer has a fair amount of gameplay alongside of it. And it reminds me a lot of classic East games, though there are some more Zelda-esque elements as well. But top-down perspective, action combat, a lot of avoiding, circular or hexagonal arenas and avoiding abilities from bosses while finding openings to counterattack.
Yeah, I do remember back when XSEED published the PlayStation version of the first game in this sort of series. It was very explicitly because they had published the Napishtim style East games on PC. And this is very much a similar gameplay style. And I think at the time, even the developer said it was very explicitly like inspired by those games. Don't quote me on that, but I want to say they said that. It wouldn't shock me, but yeah.
Well, even without that context, I look at the gameplay trailer here and go, this kind of seems East-like. And that, again, is going to be coming out on PC and Switch in July on the 13th, and then at a later date for PlayStation 4 and 5. All right, and now we're going to start running down through the rest of the release dates. We do have one sales update, and this is for the Atelier Ryza trilogy, specifically, I suppose, since it's a sales update for the first two games. The first two games combined have shipped over 1.6 million copies, which for an Atelier pair of games is quite high. Obviously, Ryza, we talked about as the first and second game have released and have been both critically and commercially received pretty well. Just kind of a new like inflection point for the series with the success that Ryza's had. And of course, we're looking... when does Ryza 3 come out? It's like literally next week, the 24th.
Next week, yep.
So within 6 days, Ryza 3 will be released. I know we have a few people on staff that are either currently looking into it or planning to.
I've been playing it. I can't really talk about it because, well, I mean...
I'm sorry, Ryza. I'm going to play Resident Evil 4 instead.
And whatnot. But
you won't be the only one, Chow.
Yeah. I guess look forward to my thoughts next week, because I don't know if our reviewer is going to be finished with it by embargo. But yeah, it's wild, like looking at the sales data, because it's like, okay, what's the sales breakdown? You got to imagine that most of it's probably Ryza 1. So if it's like 1.6 million, is Ryza 1 about to hit like 1 million sales
on its own? That'd be crazy for an Atelier game.
Yeah, like I mean, at this point, it feels inevitable with like the sales trajectory.
So I pulled up the news post from 2 years ago, from March 2021. That's when the series surpassed 1 million sales. So summer of 2020, it was announced that Atelier Ryza sold 500,000. March 2021, the series had sold 1 million. So that ballpark napkin math, Ryza 1 over 500,000, let's call it 600,000, Ryza 2 making up the difference to make 1,400,000 or so. So now that they're both at 1.6, we're probably at the point where Ryza 1 is nearing that 7-digit mark. I'm clearly, if it had, I'm guessing they would just state that. But the fact that we're even in that ballpark for the series is pretty darn good. And the fact that Ryza 2 has sold seemingly nearly as well, or at least without a big drop-off, reading between the lines here. I'm curious of what their expectations for Ryza 3 are, because obviously there's been a bit of a longer time period between Ryza 2 and 3 compared to 1 and 2. So I don't know if that would help or hurt the sales potential for Ryza 3. More people have had a chance to play the first two games, but also it's been longer. So I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to see how Ryza 3 is received, both commercially as well as critically. All right. I believe everything else here is related to a release date or release window, except for one thing at the very end. This should be in chronological order, so we'll just get through it. Agaris Generations of War will launch in Europe on Nintendo Switch on March 24th.
I love that. I love the pronunciation. I never heard it called Agaris.
Agaris? How is it pronounced?
I think it's Agaris.
Agaris. All right. I'm just glad I pronounced Touhou correctly and didn't say Touhou or something like that.
I mean,
Agaris Generations of War. It just means I never heard it say that out loud. Okay.
Oh, Touhou is a perfectly valid pronunciation. Yes, because it sounds funny.
We already talked about this one, but Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin will be launching on Steam on April 6th. A pixel art action RPG, Hunt of the Night, will be launching on April 13th for PC. There are plans for console versions on both PlayStation, Switch, and Xbox, but are set to launch at a later date. This is one that maybe isn't surprising. System Shock, the long-awaited remake that I am still not convinced actually exists, has been delayed from its planned March release window and will now launch on May 30th for Steam, Epic Game Store, and GOG, and then it will follow in due course to
Whatever
PlayStation.
that means.
Yeah, to PlayStation and Xbox consoles.
So yeah, well, once again, if you had any hope of playing this game in the next, let's see, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13 days, you're out of luck. As of this recording, there's only 13 days left in the month of March, and if you were hoping to play this game in that time frame, well, maybe by the very end of May, maybe.
We talked about Tokyo Xanadu EX is launching on Switch in Japan in June on the 29th. This is not a new release date. We talked earlier this year about Sea of Stars. We'll be releasing in August. It's one of those, again, JRPG-inspired indie projects that has been kind of anticipated for a while.
I know this. I know I am in agreement with Adam here, but it's sort of a little annoying that this whole staggered announcement of all the consoles Sea of Stars was gonna release on is how many months did it take for it to finally fully reveal that yes, it's coming to all platforms, Adam?
For which one?
Sea of Stars.
A long time.
Yeah,
it was PC and Switch, and then they added PlayStation, then they added Xbox.
Yeah, and it was all in the course of a year and a half, it feels like. And it's man, I get it, but it's kind of annoying.
And I like how it's actually the next news post here is pretty much the exact same thing. Lost Eidolons. This is a strategy RPG indie project that launched last year in October on PC. Already knew that it was coming to Xbox consoles later this year, but the developer Ocean Drive Studio has also announced that it will be coming to PlayStation consoles as well. So no other details other than some of the existing press release. I mean, the game's already out on PC, so it's a known commodity at this point. But don't know when the console release date is. But whenever it does come, it will also launch on PlayStation in addition to Xbox.
If I wanted to be like Sea of Stars, they'll announce a Switch version 2 months before launch, and then they'll announce an N-Gage version a week before launch, along with the Stadia version.
Well, no, what they'll do is the game will launch. Then they'll announce a Switch version, but not with a date. So Adam will have to write a news post saying it's coming to Switch. Then later they'll announce a date for that version. So we'll have to write the news post saying, by the way, it's got a date now.
Well, wait, no. You're missing a step. They're going to announce a release window.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
Of course. They'll say the month. It's coming sometime in March. Then the day after.
I still liked for Baldur's Gate 3. They're August. And then months later, they're the last day in August because we committed to August.
Nailed it.
I don't know why I put this one last, but Atlus has recently announced that they're going to be holding a Shin Megami Tensei 30th anniversary concert at Anime Expo, which takes place this summer, I believe, in June or July 1st, actually. So the very first day in July. They have explicitly stated that there will be this evening will highlight the rich history of the series and will not include any major announcements. Of course, there's
music. Any reasonable person who goes to a concert in person, you should be there for the music and not for are they gonna not have any announcements?
But Josh, play ball with me. They said no major announcements. What are some less than major announcements that could show up?
They'll announce Persona 5: The Phantom X.
Is the PC version of Shin Megami Tensei 5 a major announcement, or is that a minor announcement?
Oh God,
is there any hope? Remember that, Ruber?
They'll give you a card at the bottom of everyone's seat saying go participate in the infiltration test for our Persona 5 gacha game.
All right, there you go.
And make sure to spend a lot of money on it.
But this is a Shin Megami Tensei concert, not a Persona concert.
Oh well, you're right. Damn. Then they're gonna have gacha codes for the Shin Megami Tensei mobile game, the Liberation DX. That's your minor announcement. Sorry. But if I was still in California, I would definitely go to this. But since I'm not there, it makes going to this a bit trickier. I wanted to go, but if I was still living in California, I would definitely go. I love SMT music. I love the rich history of it. I love all the different styles of it.
And there's the slim chance that you could be there when they announce Shin Megami Tensei 5 for PC.
Yeah, just like when I was there at the Nier concert in Chicago, and they definitely announced the Replicant remaster for sure.
I'm just gonna change the topic real fast. Does anyone know when the eShop closed down for the Nintendo?
It closes down the 27th, I think.
Better get your SMT games from there.
Yeah, I'm actually, I guess a sneak peek. I am working on a feature about basically how the industry needs to do a damn better job at preserving their games, because there's so many RPGs that are just going to be lost when the eShop goes down.
That's the minor announcement, Brian. They're announcing that they're making remasters of was it SMT4, For Apocalypse, Strange Journey on more publicly available platforms or more relevant platforms. There you go. There's your minor announcement. Trying to think of any other SMT game that was on the DS and 3DS.
The Soul Hackers.
Devil Survivor.
Oh, yeah,
yeah, Soul Hackers. Yeah, so the whole Soul Hackers one. Damn, that's a lot of fucking games.
Yeah.
Also, Etrian Odyssey 4, 5, and Nexus. Not to mention Untold 1 and 2, though obviously whether you prefer those versus the original will
still depend.
Yeah.
Let's get physical copies. I wonder how many
Bravely Default and Bravely Second both are going to be gone. The Xenoblade Chronicles Cross data packs, if you don't get them.
Oh, yeah. That's going to be actually big. Fuck.
One of the funniest thing I've seen is on eBay is the Fire Emblem Fates special edition has gone up to like 300 to 500.
Yeah, because the Japanese version of the collector's edition, it just came for code for it because Revelations came out later. So it's like the Western version of that collector's edition will be the only way to access all of those paths in one cart once the eShop goes down.
I didn't think of that. Like, so I took a break from Fire Emblem during Fates, Awakening Fates. But if I wanted to play all 3 campaigns of Fates, would that be possible anymore?
Nope.
No. Okay, that's a shame.
Had to shell out that money for that special edition.
Yeah, it's okay. We all know you just want to play Conquest only, right, Brian?
It's okay. It's okay once Nintendo no longer wants your money for those games. That means redacted.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, look, when you have no other means to get them legally, you got to do what you got to do.
It's like I've been on the record for shit like how this is the reason why emulation rocks, and people say, well, you can't play games on emulators without dumping them. I'm like, exactly. You can't be for video game preservation and be against the ability to make backups of your games.
Yeah.
This industry does not allow that.
It's kind of interesting how they've people like how the industry has kind of like fooled people into thinking that's like a bad thing, of like being able to dump your games for future preservation and how they got people on that narrative like, no, that's bad. It's like, what?
Yeah, I literally lost like some Twitter mutuals remember when Kotaku put out an article about how like Metroid Dread was working on like Yuzu day 1.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is actually awesome. And people were like, why are you advocating piracy? And it's like, no, it's awesome because it means that emulation's in a state where we won't have to, like, thank God, like, Semu is in such a state where any Wii U game, you just won't have to worry about it. As long as someone's dumped it, it'll be preserved. But 3DS emulation, that still has some issues.
Yeah.
And it's like, not to mention the hardware, and like, spoiler alert, like there's like that scare that people are going through with like Wii U's just killing themselves. And not to mention with the 3DS, it's like, so with the PSP, if your battery died, as long as you had the AC adapter plugged in, you could still use your PSP. You cannot do that with the 3DS because of the way that the 3DS's power delivery works. The charging port goes through the circuitry through the battery.
Oh,
so it's so if the battery so when all of the batteries for 3DSs die, that means that even if the rest of the 3DS hardware is working fine, game over.
Yeah. I didn't think that was how they did that. That's crazy. That's fucked up.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes when people say like preservation, like, well, that's just a cop out. And so I don't know why it took like the fact like, there's a Fire Emblem game you will not be able to play in a month. Just I've seen pretty high profile. Like,
there's a Fire Emblem game you won't be able to play in a little over a week.
Yeah.
I better get on that.
So, we had this conversation, when we thought that the PlayStation stores were like closing down, like something about like at some point where like it prompted us to like go, hey, like these are the
they backpedal.
And to be clear, like there's like another thing where it's like, as of right now, and it kind of fell under the radar, but you cannot transfer games from a PS3 to a Vita anymore because of a most recent update on PS3.
Is that what the firmware update did for the recent PS3 update? Really?
I think it was the one before that, but basically, I'm not sure if people remember this, but there's a certain number of PSP and PlayStation 1 games that the only way to play them on Vita legitimately was if you transferred them from a PS3. You can no longer do that anymore. It's because of a two-factor authentication thing.
Oh, that's so annoying.
Yeah. So, and it's just, again, this industry just does not care about preservation, because why would they? I mean, after all, they could just remake a game 20 years later, get massive review scores, and get people to spend $60 or $70 on an entirely new version of a game. Even though,
they definitely could charge $30 for Ancient Odyssey 1 again. That's true.
Yeah. And not to say that remakes are bad, but like when preservation is at an all-time low, and you know what? I'm sorry, Capcom. I'm not gonna be like sneaky about that. You're actually relatively good about preserving your stuff, at least compared to the rest of the industry. Relatively good. Still not perfect. Nobody in this industry is perfect. It's just, what a nightmare.
Yeah.
So the eShop that you did have the correct date earlier, James. It is March 27th. So I guess we'll get one more chance next week to shout it out, and then it'll be gone for good.
3ds.hacks.guide.
Damn.
Well, that's all the news posts that I had for this edition of the podcast. So I think it's about time we wrap this up. We made it to the 3-hour mark again, somehow, just about. So thank you to Josh for going over his thoughts on Atlus Fallen as well as Exoprimal, and then Chow and of course the rest of the crew here for Trails to Azure. Again, we have those 2 op-eds up on the site for Adam's Valkyrie profile feature, and then James's Fantasian port begging piece, to state it bluntly. You can find RPG Site on all the social media platforms. You should be able to search for RPG Site and find us on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram. You can join our Discord by hitting the link at the top of our homepage at rpgsite.net, or it should be linked below any of our YouTube videos. If you've listened to the end of this podcast here, I'll just solicit some feedback. If you listen to this end of this podcast, go ahead and give us some feedback. We actually did get quite a nice comment on our last YouTube upload where we found a champion of Fantasy Life talking about their interest in the for the new Fantasy Life I game that was announced at the Nintendo Direct in early February. So it was really nice to hear that and get some detail about a game that we couldn't really speak to about due to our lack of knowledge on the series. So thank you so much for that, and we'd love to see more comments on that. So if there's any game here that you thought we could provide more detail on, or any feedback of things we're doing well or doing poorly, let us know. We love hearing that stuff. But otherwise, other than that, go ahead, Joe.
I was going to say, feel free to leave those comments about it, because I'm actually willing to try the game now because of this comment, you know?
I mean, yeah, me too. I want to play it. Sure. Like that sounds interesting with that person.
Well, shit. You only have a little more than a week to pick it up, though. So.
Well, it's funny, strict deadline.
And then we will be back next week with another episode of the Tetracast. Sounds like we'll at least have a little bit of time to talk about Ryza 3. But thank you all so much for listening. Stay safe and take care. And we'll talk to you all next time.